Forced vows. If you run, I'll find you, said the billionaire. By morning, she was his wife. Prologue, the inheritance. Elena. The hospital smelled like bleach and the end of things. I stood in the hallway outside the ICU, still wearing my paint-stained jeans and the oversized flannel I had thrown on when the phone rang at 2:17 a.m. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. That particular frequency that burrows into your skull and stays there. Miss Morgan? A woman in blue scrubs approached, her face already arranged into that careful expression medical professionals perfect. Sympathy measured in precise doses, nothing that might crack their own composure. I knew what she was going to say before she opened her mouth. I'm sorry. We did everything we could. The words hit like stones. Heavy, inevitable, final. My father was dead. Thomas Morgan, 47 years old, found slumped over his desk at Morgan Tech's cramped office in Dumbo at 11:43 p.m. massive coronary. The paramedics said he was probably gone before he hit the keyboard. There was mercy in that. They said he didn't suffer. I wanted to laugh. My father had been suffering for years, drowning in debt, chasing investors who never called back, watching his dream corrode from the inside out. The heart attack was just a period at the end of a sentence that had been running on too long. Can I see him? The nurse nodded, and I followed her through doors that whispered shut behind us. The room was small, curtained dim. My father lay on the bed with a sheet pulled to his chest, his face slack in a way it never was in life. Even in sleep, Thomas Morgan had always looked tense, chasing solutions in his dreams. I reached for his hand. Still warm. That was worse somehow. I'll give you some time, the nurse murmured and left. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for his hand to cool. Long enough for the sky outside the narrow window to shift from black to that bruised pre-dawn gray that belongs to no particular time, suspended between night and morning. A soft knock interrupted the silence. Miss Morgan? I'm Daniel Yates. I was your father's attorney. I turned. The man in the doorway was 60-ish, rumpled suit, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He held a leather briefcase like a shield. I'm sorry for your loss, he said. Thomas was a good man. Brilliant. He stopped himself. I'm sorry. This isn't the time. It's fine. My voice sounded strange. Distant. What do you need? Your father left specific instructions. There's an envelope. He made me promise to deliver it personally if anything happened to him. Yates set the briefcase on the room's single chair, clicked it open, and withdrew a manila envelope, thick, sealed with red wax that had cracked with age. My name was written across the front in my father's angular handwriting. Elena. Open only if I die. What is this? I don't know. He never told me the contents. But he was very clear. You were to receive it immediately. Yates pressed the envelope into my hands. There's more we need to discuss. The company, his assets, the outstanding debts. But that can wait until... What debts? Something flickered in his expression. Pity. We should schedule a proper meeting. When you've had time to... What debts? I repeated. Yates sighed. He suddenly looked much older. Substantial ones. The company's been operating in the red for 18 months. Your father took out several loans, used the patents as collateral. If we can't restructure quickly, the creditors will... How much? Total? Including interest? He paused. Just over $3 million. The number was absurd. Impossible. My father's company had maybe 2 employees and a half-finished product that kept failing beta tests. Where would $3 million even go? That's not possible. Morgan Tech is barely. The primary debt is older, much older. Yates gestured to the envelope. I think you should read that. Then call me. He handed me a business card. I mean it, Elena. Read it tonight. And call me. He left before I could respond. I looked down at the envelope in my hands. The wax seal bore an impression I couldn't quite make out in the dim light. Some kind of emblem or crest. My fingers found the edge, hesitated. Not here. Something inside me whispered. Not next to his body. I kissed my father's cold forehead, whispered something that might have been goodbye, or forgive me, or I love you, the words tangled together, indistinguishable from grief. Then I walked out of that room and didn't look back. My apartment in Williamsburg was a fourth-floor walk-up with radiators that clanked like ghosts and a view of a brick wall. I'd lived there for 3 years, ever since dropping out of Columbia to help my father full-time. He'd protested, said I was throwing away my future. I'd told him he was my future. Now he was ash in a cooling body, and an envelope I was afraid to open. I made coffee, drank it, made more. The sun rose properly, painting my kitchen in shades of weak gold. The city woke up outside. Car horns, distant sirens, someone's radio playing reggaeton through thin walls. Life continuing, oblivious. At 7 a.m., I finally opened the envelope. Inside, a contract. 23 pages, printed on heavy stock that had yellowed at the edges. The header read, Cross Ventures Capital, Seed Investment Agreement, dated March 15, 1998. I scanned the first page. Standard venture capital terms, or what looked standard to my untrained eye. Cross Ventures would provide $500,000 in seed funding to Morgan Tech, then just a concept in my father's graduate school notebooks. In exchange, 30% equity, board seat, standard protections. But there was an addendum. Clause 17, subsection C. I read it once, twice, 3 times, certain I was misunderstanding. In the event that primary debtor, Thomas Morgan, fails to satisfy outstanding obligations prior to death or legal incapacitation, and if said obligations cannot be reconciled through liquidation of company assets, the debt shall transfer as a marital obligation to any direct heir of legal age. Said heir shall enter into marriage contract with a representative of Cross Ventures, to be determined by surviving Cross family member, within 90 days of primary debtor's death. This clause shall be considered binding and enforceable under New York State contract law. I stopped breathing. This wasn't real. Couldn't be real. Marriage as debt collateral? That was medieval, barbaric, completely unenforceable in any modern court, except my hands were shaking again as I flipped through the remaining pages. Signatures on the final page, my father's, younger and optimistic, and below it, Robert Cross, Cross Ventures Capital. A sticky note was attached to the signature page, written in my father's handwriting, recent by the look of the ink. Elena, I'm so sorry. I thought I could fix this. I thought I had more time. Robert died 5 years ago. His son Damien took over Cross Ventures. He's not like his father. He won't let this go. If you're reading this, run. Take what you can and run far. Don't let him trap you the way I was trapped. I love you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The paper crumpled in my fist. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something, instinct, dread, the universe's cruel sense of timing, made me swipe to accept. Miss Morgan? A woman's voice. Crisp. Professional. The kind of voice that never had to repeat itself. This is Carolyn Webb, executive assistant to Damien Cross. Mr. Cross would like to meet with you tomorrow morning to discuss your father's outstanding obligations to Cross Ventures. My throat was dry. I need time. My father just... Mr. Cross is aware of your loss. He extends his condolences. No warmth in the words. Just information delivered. However, the contract stipulates a 72-hour notification period following the primary debtor's death. That period began at 11:43 p.m. last night. You now have 70 hours and 16 minutes remaining. This is insane. That contract can't possibly be legal. Mr. Cross's legal team disagrees, as does the New York State Attorney General's office, which reviewed the contract in 2019. A pause. Mr. Cross will see you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. sharp. Cross Tower, penthouse level. Security will expect you. And if I don't come, then Mr. Cross will proceed with seizing Morgan Tech's assets and intellectual property at 8:01 a.m. The company your father spent his life building will be dissolved by noon. Your choice, Miss Morgan. The line went dead. I sat on my kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, Contract pages scattered around me like evidence of some crime I didn't commit but would be punished for anyway. Somewhere in Manhattan, in a tower made of glass and steel and money, a man I'd never met was waiting, and I had 70 hours to decide whether to fight him or become his wife. The coffee had gone cold. Outside, the city kept moving, indifferent to the way my entire world had just collapsed into a single impossible choice. I picked up my phone and called Daniel Yates. "He's serious, isn't he?" I asked when he answered. "Cross. He'll actually enforce this." A long silence. Then, "Damien Cross doesn't bluff. Elena, if he says he'll take the company, he will. If he says the contract is enforceable, his lawyers have already made sure it is." Another pause. "I've known your father since you were 10 years old. He made mistakes, but he loved you more than anything. He wouldn't want you to sacrifice yourself for his debts. But he knew Cross would do this. That's why he wrote that note." "Yes." "Then I don't have a choice." "There's always a choice." I looked at the contract, at my father's signature, at the words marital obligation in bold print. "No," I said quietly. "There really isn't." I hung up, made a fresh pot of coffee, opened my laptop, and searched. Damien Cross. The results loaded. Forbes profile. Business Insider features. Society page photos from charity galas. And there, a headshot from Cross Ventures' website. He was younger than I expected. Mid-30s, dark hair, gray eyes that looked like winter. Sharp suit, sharper jaw. The kind of face that belonged on currency or wanted posters. Handsome in a way that felt dangerous, like admiring a blade. I studied that face for a long time, trying to see the man who would enforce a contract written before I was born. Try to imagine what kind of person turned debt into marriage, business into bondage. His eyes stared back from the screen. Cold, certain, unforgiving. 8 a.m. tomorrow. Cross Tower. I had 69 hours left. I didn't sleep. Chapter 1. The Beast Lair. Elena. Cross Tower stood like a shard of ice in the heart of Manhattan's financial district. All glass and steel, and the kind of money that didn't need to announce itself. 73 floors of venture capital, private equity, and the quiet violence of men who turn other people's desperation into profit. I stood on the sidewalk across the street at 7:47 a.m., watching my reflection waver in those pristine windows. I'd chosen my armor carefully. Black sheet dress, the good one I saved for pitching investors, paired with my mother's pearl earrings. The only jewelry I owned that wasn't costume. My hair was pulled back tight enough to hurt, because pain kept you focused, kept you sharp. I needed sharp. The contract sat in my bag like a bomb. I'd read it 17 more times during the sleepless night, searching for loopholes, escape clauses, any word or phrase that might save me. There was nothing. My father and Robert Cross had been thorough, or maybe just cruel. Run, my father's note had said. Don't let him trap you. But running meant watching Morgan Tech dissolve. Meant my father's last 20 years, every missed birthday, every canceled vacation, every night he'd chosen his work over sleep would amount to nothing. His patents, his code, his dream of changing how people interacted with technology, all of it would be stripped and sold to the highest bidder. I couldn't let that happen. So instead of running, I crossed the street. The lobby was a cathedral to capitalism. Marble floors, soaring ceilings, a reception desk that looked carved from a single piece of obsidian. The woman behind it wore a headset and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything and been impressed by none of it. Elena Morgan. I said, I have an 8 o'clock with Damien Cross. She didn't check a computer. Penthouse. Elevator 3. You're expected. The elevator was glass-walled, offering a view of Manhattan as I ascended. The city spread below, vast and indifferent. I watched Brooklyn disappear, watched the East River shrink to a silver thread. By the time I reached the 73rd floor, I felt like I'd left the earth entirely. The doors opened onto a reception area that was all clean lines and uncomfortable modern furniture, the kind designed to make you feel small. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view that probably cost more per square foot than my entire apartment. Miss Morgan, the woman who greeted me, was 50-ish, perfectly composed, wearing a suit that probably cost what I made in a month. Carolyn Webb, I assumed. The voice from yesterday's call. Mr. Cross is ready for you. This way. She led me down a hallway lined with abstract art, the expensive kind that looked like nothing but signaled everything about the person who bought it. We stopped at a door of frosted glass. Some advice? Carolyn said, her voice dropping. Don't waste his time. Don't appeal to sentiment. And don't lie. He always knows. She knocked twice, then opened the door. Miss Morgan, sir. I stepped inside. The office was massive, dominated by windows that turned Manhattan into wallpaper. A desk of darkwood sat before them, clean except for a laptop and a single file folder. The furniture was minimal, expensive, chosen by someone who valued function over comfort. And behind the desk, rising as I entered, Damien Cross. The photographs hadn't lied, but they hadn't told the whole truth either. He was tall, 6'2", maybe 6'3", with the kind of build that came from discipline, not vanity. Dark hair, gray eyes that tracked my movement with unsettling focus. His suit was charcoal, perfectly tailored, no tie. The top button of his shirt was undone. The only concession to casualness in a man who looked like he'd been carved from stone. He was beautiful the way winter was beautiful. Austere, unforgiving, dangerous if you weren't careful. Miss Morgan. His voice matched his appearance, low, controlled, with an edge that suggested he didn't often need to raise it. Sit. Not an invitation. A command. I sat in one of the chairs facing his desk, keeping my spine straight, my hands folded in my lap. He remained standing for a moment, studying me with the kind of attention that made my skin prickle. Then he sat, opened a file folder, and slid a document across the desk. It was my father's contract. This copy was annotated in red ink, notes in the margins, sections highlighted, tabs marking specific clauses. Your father signed this 26 years ago, Damien said. He received $500,000 in seed capital. Morgan Tech never turned a profit sufficient to repay the loan. Interest compounded. Additional capital was extended in 2015. More interest. By the time of his death, the total debt was $3.2 million. His finger tapped Clause 17. This is a relevant section. I've read it. Then you understand the situation. I understand you're trying to enforce a contract that belongs in the Middle Ages. I kept my voice level. Marriage as debt collateral? No court will uphold that. Something flickered in his expression. Not quite amusement. 3 courts already have. My legal team was very thorough. He pulled out another document, a legal brief, dense with citations. The contract was reviewed by the New York State Attorney General's office in 2019, found to be legally binding under contract law precedent dating back to the 1800s. Unusual, yes. Unenforceable, no. The brief landed on top of the contract. I didn't touch it. Your father knew these terms when he signed. Damien continued. He knew what would happen if he failed to repay. He made his choice. Now you make yours. That's not a choice. That's extortion. That's business. He leaned back in his chair, those gray eyes never leaving my face. You have 48 hours to decide. Marry me, or I seize Morgan Tech's assets. Every patent, every line of code, every piece of intellectual property your father created. I'll strip the company and sell it in pieces. Why? The word came out harder than I intended. You're worth billions. $3 million is nothing to you. Why do this? Because your father stole from mine. The answer was immediate, absolute, and it shifted something in the air between us. 26 years ago, Thomas Morgan and Robert Cross were partners, Damien said. Equal shares in a startup that would have revolutionized data encryption. Your father took half the intellectual property and disappeared in the middle of the night, left my father with nothing but debt and a company that collapsed within 6 months. He stood, walked a window, his back to me. My father drank himself to death trying to rebuild what your father destroyed. I was 14 when I found him. He'd been dead for 3 days. The words were delivered without emotion, but I heard the rage underneath. Old rage, the kind that had fossilized into something harder than hate. "I'm sorry," I said quietly, "but I'm not my father." "No, you're his debt." He turned back to me. "I spent 20 years rebuilding what he took. Every dollar, every connection, every piece of reputation. Cross Ventures is worth $8 billion now. I did that, alone. And the last piece, the only piece that matters, is making sure your father's legacy dies the way mine did. By forcing me to marry you, by enforcing a contract your father signed willingly. He knew the terms. He gambled that he'd repay before he died. He lost." Damien returned to his desk, sat, steepled his fingers. "You have 48 hours. If you agree, my lawyers will draw up a prenuptial agreement. You'll move into my penthouse, attend public events as my wife, and fulfill the obligations outlined in the contract." "What obligations?" "You'll be informed when you sign." "That's not good enough." His eyes narrowed. "You're not in a position to negotiate, Miss Morgan. Then you're not in a position to get what you want." I stood, grabbed my bag. "If you want revenge, fine. Take the company. Destroy it. But I won't be your prisoner just to save my father's mistakes." I made it 3 steps toward the door before he spoke. "There's a photograph on your father's desk. You, maybe 8 years old, at a science fair. You're holding a trophy, and he's looking at you like you hung the moon." I stopped. "I had my people search his office after he died." Damien continued. "That photo was the only personal item in the entire space. Everything else was work. Patents, prototypes, investor pitches. But that picture, he kept it where he could see it every day." I turned back slowly. Damien was watching me with that same unsettling focus. "Your father was a thief and a coward, but he loved you. That's the only reason I'm giving you a choice at all. Sign the contract, and I keep Morgan Tech operational. Your father's employees keep their jobs. His patents stay intact. His legacy survives, even if his name doesn't. And if I refuse, then I dismantle everything he built, and you get to live knowing you could have stopped it." He stood, walked around the desk until he was close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and austere like cedar and smoke. "I own 3 judges, Miss Morgan. I have the patent office in my pocket. I've already filed preliminary seizure paperwork. If you walk out that door, Morgan Tech is mine by noon tomorrow. You're a monster. I'm a businessman." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a card, his personal number, I assumed. 48 hours. Call me with your decision. I took the card because refusing would have been childish. Our fingers brushed as we're cold, and something electric shot up my arm. I jerked back. He noticed. Of course he noticed. "One more thing," he said as I turned to leave. "If you run, I'll find you. And when I do, I'll take more than the company." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. I left his office, walked past Carolyn's carefully neutral expression, took the glass elevator back down to earth. My hands didn't shake until I hit the street. 48 hours. I walked for blocks, letting Manhattan swallow me, tourists and businessmen, and delivery bikes weaving through traffic. The city didn't care about medieval contracts or dead fathers or the choice between freedom and legacy. It just kept moving, indifferent and vast. My phone buzzed. Text from Daniel Yates. "How did it go?" I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled up the photo Damien had mentioned, the one from my father's desk. I'd taken it myself last night, needing something to hold on to. 8-year-old me, gap-toothed and proud, holding a trophy for a solar-powered car I'd built from a kit. My father beside me, his hand on my shoulder, his smile genuine in a way it rarely was in later years. Before the debt, before the desperation, before everything went wrong. I stood on a corner in the financial district, surrounded by towers built by men like Damien Cross. Men who turn everything into transactions, who measure worth in dollars and contracts and power. And I realized something. He'd made a mistake. Damien thought I was trapped, thought I had no leverage, no choice but to submit or watch my father's legacy burn. But he'd shown me his wound, the rage that drove him, the need for closure that had nothing to do with money. He wanted to destroy my father's legacy. which meant he needed me to care about it, which meant I had exactly one piece of leverage. I pulled out my phone and called Daniel Yates. I need you to draw up a counterproposal, I said. If Damien Cross want a wife, he's going to pay for the privilege. 48 hours. I'd make them count. Chapter 2, The Devil's Bargain. Damien, she didn't call. 47 hours and 16 minutes since Elena Morgan walked out of my office with her spine straight and her fear hidden behind those dark eyes, and my phone remained silent. I stood at my penthouse window, watching Manhattan's evening lights flicker to life, and told myself I didn't care. If she refused, the outcome was the same. Morgan Tech will be mine by tomorrow noon. The patents, the code, the last remnants of Thomas Morgan's theft would finally be absorbed into Cross Ventures where they belonged. Closure. That's what my therapist called it, back when I bothered with therapy. As if 20 years of building an empire from ash could be summarized in a single word. My phone sat on the desk behind me, dark and accusatory. Mr. Cross? Carolyn's voice through the intercom. Daniel Yates is here. He says it's urgent. I checked my watch. 7:43 p.m. Thomas Morgan's attorney, arriving after business hours without an appointment. Interesting. Send him in. Yates entered carrying a briefcase and the defeated posture of a man who'd already lost an argument he'd come to make. He was rumpled, tired, and looked like he'd aged a decade since I'd last seen him at Thomas Morgan's funeral, where I'd stood in the back, uninvited and unnoticed, watching Elena Morgan sob against a casket while I felt nothing, or told myself I felt nothing. Mr. Cross. Yates set his briefcase on my desk without asking permission. My client has authorized me to present a counterproposal. Your client has no leverage to negotiate. Nevertheless, he clicked open the briefcase, withdrew a document. Miss Morgan will agree to the marriage contract under the following revised terms. I took the document, scanned it, read it again, slower. Then I laughed, a sound I barely recognized coming from my own throat. She wants a salary? I looked up at Yates. Elena Morgan wants me to pay her to be my wife. $200,000 a year, deposited monthly into an account in her name only. Yates's voice was steady, professional. Additionally, she retains full autonomy over her schedule, career decisions, and personal relationships. She'll attend required public events, but won't be obligated to perform. He paused, choosing words carefully. Intimate duties, unless mutually agreed upon. She's negotiating consent clauses into a marriage contract. Yes. I set the document down, walked to the bar cart, poured 2 fingers of Macallan, didn't offer Yates any. What else? Morgan Tech remains operational under its current structure. Miss Morgan receives a seat on the board and veto power over any decisions regarding the company's dissolution or sale. Her father's employees retain their position for a minimum of 2 years. She wants control. She wants protection. Yates met my eyes. You're asking her to marry a stranger to pay her father's debt. She's asking for a basic human dignity in return. I drank the scotch, let it burn. The counterproposal was clever. I'd give her that. Elena had identified the only thing I wanted more than revenge, legitimacy. A wife made me look stable, trustworthy, the kind of man investors and board members could rely on. My reputation as a ruthless bastard was profitable, but it had limits. Marriage softened edges, and she knew it. The answer is no, I said. Yates blinked. Mr. Cross. If Elena Morgan wants to negotiate, she can do it herself, not through an attorney at 8 o'clock at night. I finished the scotch, set down the glass. Tell your client I'll see her tomorrow morning. 7 a.m. same office. If she's serious about this counterproposal, she can present it in person. She's trying to establish boundaries. She's trying to maintain the illusion of control. I walked back to my desk, sat. I respect that. But if we're going to be married, she needs to understand something. I don't negotiate through intermediaries. Ever. Yates gathered his briefcase slowly. You know what you're doing is unconscionable. I'm enforcing a legal contract. You're trapping a 26-year-old woman in a marriage she doesn't want because her father wronged yours a quarter century ago. That's not justice. It's cruelty. Something cold slithered through my chest. My father died alone in a studio apartment that smelled like gin and failure. Thomas Morgan stole his life's work and built a company on that theft. Where was justice then? Your father and Thomas were partners. My father was betrayed. The word came out harder than I intended. Morgan took the encryption algorithm they developed together, filed the patents under his own name, and disappeared. Left my father with nothing but debt and a company that collapsed within 6 months. I was 14 years old, and I watched him drink himself to death, trying to rebuild what Morgan destroyed. Yates was quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry for what happened to your father. Truly. But Elena isn't responsible for Thomas's sins. No, she's collateral. I opened my laptop. A clear dismissal. 7 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late. After Yates left, I pulled up Elena Morgan's file again. I'd had my people compile everything: credit history, education records, social media presence. The picture it painted was boringly virtuous. Ivy League scholarship student. Dropped out junior year to help her father full-time. Worked as a barista, a tutor, a freelance graphic designer. No criminal record, no scandals, no romantic entanglements worth noting. She was clean, careful, smart enough to know when she was trapped, but stubborn enough to fight anyway. I clicked through to her social media. The accounts were sparse. She wasn't the generation that performed their lives online. But there were photos. Elena at a protest march, holding a sign about climate change. Elena with friends at a dive bar in Williamsburg, laughing at something off camera. Elena in her father's office, asleep on a couch with a laptop on her chest and code on the screen. In every photo, she looked alive in a way that made my penthouse feel like a mausoleum. I closed the file. Across the room, above the fireplace, hung the only piece of art I'd chosen myself. A Caravaggio reproduction, Judith beheading Holofernes. The violence of it, the chiaroscuro drama of light and shadow, the way Judith's face remained calm while she sawed through a man's neck. It had always appealed to me. A reminder that survival sometimes required brutality. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. 7 a.m. I'll be there. M. So she got my message. Good. I poured another scotch, carried it to the window. Somewhere out there in Brooklyn, Elena Morgan was probably awake, probably terrified, probably planning how to walk into my office tomorrow and pretend she had any power at all. I should have felt triumphant. This was what I'd worked toward for 20 years. The final piece of revenge against the man who destroyed my father. Instead, I felt nothing. The same emptiness that had lived in my chest since I was 14, watching paramedics carry a body bag out of a studio apartment, while neighbors whispered in hallways. My therapist had called it dissociation. I called it survival. The city glittered below, 8 million people living their small lives, unaware that in a tower above them, a man was about to trap a woman in a marriage neither of them wanted, all because 2 men had made mistakes before she was born. I drank the scotch and waited for dawn. Elena, I arrived at Cross Tower at 6:47 a.m., because arriving early was its own kind of power move. The lobby was nearly empty, just security guards and cleaning crews finishing their night shifts. I rode the elevator alone, watching the city shrink below me. I'd spent the night preparing, not just reading the contract again, but researching Damien Cross with the kind of obsessive focus I usually reserve for debugging code. Forbes profiles, business journals, society page photos. And deeper, property records, SEC filings, a sealed lawsuit from 2018 that had been settled quietly. The picture that emerged was of a man who'd built an empire through ruthless efficiency and an almost pathological need for control. Cross Ventures had a reputation for hostile takeovers and scorched-earth negotiation tactics. Damien himself was known for sleeping 4 hours a night, never taking vacations, and maintaining a personal life so private it barely existed. No long-term relationships, no scandals, no weaknesses I could exploit, except one. He needed this marriage, not for revenge. That was just a story he told himself. He needed it because somewhere in the past 20 years, Damien Cross had turned himself into a machine, and machines didn't inspire trust. They inspired fear. A wife humanized him. made him relatable, softened the edges enough that investors and board members could forget they were dealing with a man who'd once bought a competitor's company just to shut it down and fire everyone. That was my leverage. Not the contract, not the debt, but the fact that Damien Cross needed me to make this look real. The elevator doors opened. Carolyn Webb was already at her desk, looking unsurprised to see me 13 minutes early. "Miss Morgan, Mr. Cross is expecting you." She gestured toward his office. "Coffee?" "No, thank you." I walked down the hallway, past expensive abstract art, and knocked once on the frosted glass door before opening it. Damien stood at the window, silhouetted against the dawn. He turned as I entered, and I was struck again by how physically imposing he was. Not in an aggressive way, but in the way that gravity was imposing. Inevitable, inescapable. "You're early," he said. "So are you." A ghost of something crossed his face. Amusement? Respect? It was gone before I could name it. "Sit." I remained standing. "I'll stand. Thanks." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Your attorney presented a counterproposal." "I know. I wrote it. It's unacceptable." "Then we don't have a deal." I kept my voice level, channeling every ounce of false confidence I could manufacture. "You want a wife? Fine. But I won't be your prisoner. I want autonomy, financial independence, and protection from my father's company. Those are my terms." "You have no leverage to make terms." "Don't I?" I took a step closer. "You need this marriage to look legitimate. You need me to smile at galas and attend board meetings and play the role of the devoted wife. If I'm miserable, if I look trapped, people will notice. Investors will ask questions. The media will start digging." Damien's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. "You're threatening me." "I'm negotiating. There's a difference." For a long moment, we stared at each other across his office. The sun was rising behind him, turning him into a figure of shadow and light. Caravaggio come to life. Then he moved, crossing the space between us in 3 strides. He stopped close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Close enough that I could see the silver flecks in his gray eyes, the faint scar above his left eyebrow. "Let me be very clear, Miss Morgan." His voice was low, controlled, dangerous. "I've spent 20 years building Cross Ventures into what it is today. I've destroyed companies, ended careers, and ruined men who thought they could negotiate with me. Your father tried to negotiate once. He signed a contract he couldn't honor, and now you're here." He leaned in slightly. I forced myself not to step back. "If you think a salary and some veto power makes you my equal, you're mistaken. If you think I need you more than you need me, you're delusional. And if you think you can walk into my office and dictate terms," he stopped, something flickering across his face, "you're braver than I expected." The last sentence was quieter, almost curious. "I'm not brave," I said. "I'm desperate. There's a difference." "Is there?" We stood there, too close, the air between us charged with something I couldn't name. Anger, maybe, or recognition. 2 people who'd been trapped by their father's mistakes, trying to negotiate a way out. Finally, Damien stepped back. "I'll agree to the salary. $200,000 annually. And you can have your veto power over Morgan Tech's major decisions." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you. But..." He held up a hand. "The autonomy clause is modified. You'll live in my penthouse. You'll attend every public event I require. And you'll wear my ring in public at all times. This marriage needs to look real, which means you need to look like you chose it. I didn't choose it. Then you'll learn to pretend." He walked back to his desk, pulled out a folder. "My lawyers will draw up the revised prenuptial agreement. You'll sign it tomorrow. We'll marry at City Hall on Friday. No guests, no ceremony. Just the legal minimum." "What about the consummation clause?" His hand paused over the folder. "What about it?" "The original contract mentioned it. I want it removed." "No." The word was flat. "Final. Damien." "Mr. Cross," he corrected. "And the clause stays. A marriage that isn't consummated can be annulled. I won't give you that option. So you're going to force me." "I'm not going to force anything." He looked up, And for the first time, I saw something almost human in his expression. The clause states that consummation must occur within the first year of marriage. It doesn't specify when, and it doesn't specify how. When it happens, if it happens, will be your decision as much as mine. That's not exactly reassuring. It's the best you're going to get. He closed the folder. Do we have a deal, Miss Morgan? I thought about my father's photo, about 8-year-old me holding a trophy, and believing the future was something you could build with your own hands. I thought about Morgan Tech's 3 employees who'd stayed loyal even when paychecks were late. I thought about the choice between freedom and legacy, and how sometimes there was no choice at all. Yes, I said quietly. We have a deal. Damien extended his hand. I took it. His grip was firm, cold, and when I tried to pull away, he held on a moment longer. One more thing, he said. If you try to run, if you break the contract, if you do anything to embarrass me or cross ventures, I won't just take the company. I'll destroy it so thoroughly that your father's name will become a cautionary tale. Do you understand? I understand. Good. He released my hand. Carolyn will send you the paperwork. Read it carefully. Sign it tomorrow. And Elena, I paused at the door. Yes. Welcome to the family. The words should have sounded warm. Instead, they sounded like a prison door closing. I left his office, rode the elevator down, and stepped out into a Manhattan morning that looked exactly the same as yesterday. The city didn't care that I just agreed to marry a stranger. It just kept moving, indifferent and vast. My phone buzzed. Text from Daniel Yates. Did you sign? Not yet. I typed back. Tomorrow. Another buzz. This time from an unknown number. I opened it. A photo. Me. Leaving Cross Tower. Taken from a high angle. The perspective made me look small, alone, swallowed by the city. Below it, 47 hours. Don't be late. D.C. I looked up at Cross Tower, at the penthouse level where Damien Cross was probably still standing at his window, watching the city like a king surveying his kingdom. In 3 days, I'd be his wife. I'd negotiated for autonomy, for protection, for the illusion of choice. But standing there on a Manhattan sidewalk with a surveillance photo on my phone, I understood the truth. Damien Cross had let me negotiate because it made me feel powerful, because it made me complicit, because a prisoner who walks into her cell willingly is easier to keep than one who has to be dragged. I deleted the photo and started walking toward the subway. 47 hours until I became Mrs. Damien Cross. I'd make them count. Chapter 3. The Signing. Elena. The prenuptial agreement arrived at 6 a.m. Thursday morning via courier, a man in a black suit who made me sign for it like I was receiving evidence of my own execution. 47 pages. I'd expected that. What I hadn't expected was a level of detail. The way every aspect of my future had been reduced to numbered clauses and legal terminology that turned a marriage into a business acquisition. I made coffee, the expensive kind I save for emergencies, and spread the document across my kitchen table. Outside, Williamsburg was waking up. Garbage trucks, early commuters, someone's dog barking 3 floors down. Normal sounds. A normal Thursday morning for everyone except me. Article 3. Cohabitation requirements. Wife shall maintain primary residence at husband's penthouse property located at Cross Tower, 73rd floor. Wife is permitted to retain secondary residence for storage purposes, but may not occupy said residence for more than 48 consecutive hours without husband's written consent. I circle that section in red pen. Written consent. Like I was a teenager asking permission for a sleepover. Article 7. Public appearances. Wife agrees to attend all social functions, business dinners, charity galas, and public events as requested by husband with minimum 48 hours notice. Wife's attire, behavior, and public statements are subject to husband's approval to maintain appropriate representation of Cross Ventures brand. My hand tightened on the pen. Subject to approval. He wanted to dress me like a doll, script my conversations, control how I smile for cameras. Article 12. Financial arrangements. Wife shall receive annual salary of $200,000, paid in monthly installments of $16,666.67, deposited into account established in wife's name. Salary is contingent upon wife's compliance with all terms herein. Failure to comply results in immediate cessation of payments and potential breach of contract penalties. At least he'd agreed to that part. $200,000 was more money than I'd ever had, even if it came with strings attached. Golden handcuffs, my mother would have called them. She died when I was 16, but I still heard her voice sometimes, offering commentary on my worst decisions. This would be at the top of her list. I kept reading. Clauses about social media, restricted, independent employment, permitted but monitored, travel, requiring approval, and a section on marital obligations that was somehow both explicit and maddeningly vague. Article 15. Intimacy and consummation. Marriage must be consummated within 12 months of signing to be considered legally binding and non-voidable. Consummation shall be defined as voluntary sexual intercourse between husband and wife. Both parties must provide verbal consent. Timing and circumstances of consummation are subject to mutual agreement. Voluntary. Mutual agreement. The words should have been reassuring. Instead, they felt like a countdown clock I couldn't stop. My phone buzzed. Text from Damien. Receive the agreement? Yes, I typed back. Questions? About 1,000, but asking them would show weakness. And I'd learned in our 2 meetings that Damien Cross respected strength more than anything else. No questions, I sent. When do I sign? City Hall. 2 p.m. Bring your ID and the signed agreement. We'll handle the marriage license simultaneously. I stared at the message. City Hall. 2 p.m. less than 8 hours from now. I'd be married to a man I'd met twice, whose last name I'd carry, whose bed I'd eventually share, whose life would consume mine like a black hole swallowing light. My hands were shaking. I set down the phone, walked to the window, pressed my forehead against the cold glass. Across the street, a woman about my age was loading a stroller into a car, struggling with the mechanism while a toddler grabbed at her hair. Normal problems. Normal life. The kind of Thursday morning I'd never have again. I pulled out my father's letter, the one he'd left with the contract. I'd read it so many times the paper was soft. The ink smudged from my fingers. Elena, I'm so sorry. I thought I could fix this. I thought I had more time. He'd thought he had time. But time was the one thing none of us could negotiate for, couldn't buy or borrow or steal. My father had run out of time, and now I was paying the price. I picked up the pen and started signing. Each signature felt like a small death. Elena Morgan in careful script, over and over, initialing sections that stripped away my autonomy piece by piece. By the time I reached the final page, my hand was cramping and my coffee had gone cold. I signed the last line, dated it, and sat back. Done. In 8 hours, I'd be Mrs. Damien Cross. I allowed myself exactly 5 minutes to fall apart, cry into my hands at my kitchen table, while the city woke up outside, indifferent to the girl who just sold herself to save her father's ghost. Then I washed my face, put on armor in the form of the black sheet dress, and called Daniel Yates. I signed it, I said when he answered. Silence. Then, Elena, you don't have to do this. We could fight the contract, find a legal loophole. You said yourself there's no loophole. 3 courts upheld it. The AG's office reviewed it. I looked at my reflection in the window, pale, determined, already half ghost. This is the only way to save Morgan Tech. Your father wouldn't want you to sacrifice yourself. My father's dead. He doesn't get a vote. The words came out harsher than I intended. I need you to do something for me. As my attorney, not as... Of course. I want you to set up a trust. If anything happens to me, if I die, if I disappear, if I'm incapacitated, Morgan Tech's patents revert to the employees. Not to Damien, not to Cross Ventures. To the people who actually built it. Another pause. You think he'd hurt you? I think he's capable of anything. And I want insurance. I'll have the papers drawn up by end of day. Thank you. I checked the time. 6:47 a.m. I have to go. I'm getting married in 7 hours. I hung up before he could respond. City Hall at 2 p.m. was a study in bureaucratic efficiency. Fluorescent lights, worn linoleum, the smell of old paper and resignation. I arrived at 1:53 p.m., clutching the signed prenup and my driver's license like talismans. Damien was already there. He stood near the marriage license bureau, checking his phone, looking impossibly out of place in his charcoal suit among the couples in jeans and sundresses. When he saw me, he pocketed the phone and approached. Elena, Damien. We stood there awkwardly, two people about to legally bind themselves together who couldn't manage small talk. He looked tired, I realized. Faint shadows under his eyes, a tightness around his mouth that suggested he'd slept as poorly as I had. You signed it? He asked. I held up the document. All 47 pages. Good. He gestured toward the bureau. Shall we? The clerk who processed our marriage license was a woman in her 50s who clearly seen everything and been impressed by nothing. She took our IDs, typed information into a computer that belonged in a museum, and asked the required questions in a monotone that suggested she'd asked them 10,000 times before. Any legal impediments to this marriage? No, we said in unison. Previous marriages? No. Are you entering this marriage of your own free will? I hesitated. Damien's eyes cut to me, sharp and warning. Yes, I said. The clerk printed the license, had us sign it, and stamped it with a thunk that sounded like a judge's gavel. Congratulations. You can get married now. That was it. No ceremony, no music, no moment of reflection. Just bureaucracy and a stamp. We walked to the chapel, a small room of wooden benches and a podium where a tired-looking officiant waited. There were no other people, no witnesses except the officiant's assistant, a young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Names? The officiant asked. Damien Cross and Elena Morgan. Damien said, Rings. Damien reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black box. Inside, a platinum band with black sapphire that caught the fluorescent light and turned it into something dark and beautiful. He'd remembered my counterproposal, had said nothing about rings. Of course he had. Hold hands, please. I extended my hand. Damien took it. His fingers were cold, or maybe mine were. I couldn't tell anymore. The officiant began the standard ceremony. Dearly beloved, gathered here today, lawful union. The words washed over me like white noise. I focused on Damien's hand instead, the way his thumb rested against my knuckles, the faint callus on his index finger that suggested he did something with his hands besides sign contracts. Do you, Damien Cross, take Elena Morgan to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. No hesitation. His voice steady as stone. Do you, Elena Morgan, take Damien Cross to be your lawfully wedded husband? This was it. The last moment I could run. The last second of being just Elena Morgan, broke and desperate, but free. I looked up at Damien. He was watching me with those winter gray eyes. And for just a moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Not quite regret. Maybe recognition that we were both trapped here, both paying for our father's sins. I do, I said quietly. By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now pronounce you husband and wife. The officiant smiled, perfunctory and tired. You may kiss the bride. Damien's hand tightened on mine. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away. I didn't. Couldn't. This was part of the performance. The thing that made it look real. His lips touched mine. Cool, brief, utterly chaste. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. But in those 3 seconds, I felt the full weight of what I'd done. Bound myself to a stranger, sold my future for my father's past, stepped into a cage disguised as a contract. When he pulled back, his expression was unreadable. Congratulations, the officiant said, handing us the marriage certificate. Best wishes for a happy life together. The irony was so thick, I almost laughed. The car back to Manhattan was a black town car with privacy glass and leather seats that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Damien sat on one side. I sat on the other, the marriage certificate between us like a border neither of us wanted to cross. We need to discuss living arrangements, he said finally. The prenup covered that. I move into your penthouse. This weekend, I'll have my assistant coordinate with you about your belongings. Bring whatever you need. The penthouse has a guest wing, 3 bedrooms, private bathroom, sitting area. You'll have your own space. How generous. I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. He turned to look at me fully. You're angry? I just married a man who's blackmailing me. Anger seems appropriate. I'm not blackmailing you. I'm enforcing a contract. There's a difference? Legally, yes. He looked back out the window. We have a charity gala tomorrow night, 8 p.m. It's the annual Cross Ventures fundraiser for tech education nonprofits. Very public, very visible. You'll need an appropriate dress. Subject to your approval. According to Article 7, I'll have my stylist send options to your apartment tomorrow morning. Your stylist? Unless you prefer to shop yourself. But the dress code is black tie, and the guest list includes 3 senators and the head of the SEC. First impressions matter. I looked down at the ring on my left hand, the black sapphire catching light from the passing streetlights, turning it into something that looked like a bruise. What do I tell people? About us. About how we met. The truth, mostly. Your father and mine were business partners. We reconnected after your father's death to settle estate matters. Things moved quickly. He glanced at me. People will believe it. Whirlwind romance, powerful man, beautiful woman. It's a story they want to believe. I'm not beautiful. You are. The words were matter-of-fact, clinical. You're also intelligent, well-educated, and photograph well. My PR team did their research. You'll be an asset. An asset, like a stock portfolio or a real estate holding. The car pulled up to my building in Williamsburg. Damien made no move to get out. I'll see you Saturday, he said. Noon. My assistant will send details. I opened the door, then paused. Damien, why did you choose a black sapphire? For the first time since I'd met him, he looked uncertain. It reminded me of something my mother used to say. Diamonds are for people who want to be seen. Sapphires are for people who want to be understood. He looked away. She died when I was 12. Before I could respond, he nodded to the driver. Dismissal. I climbed out of the car and watched it pull away, taking my new husband back to his tower of glass and steel and money. Upstairs, my apartment looked smaller than I remembered. Shabbier. The furniture I bought secondhand. The art I'd hung to cover water stains. The life I'd built from scraps and student loans and desperate hope. All of it suddenly felt like a museum exhibit of the person I used to be. I sat on my bed and looked at the ring on my hand. Mrs. Damien Cross. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Welcome to the family. Carolyn. Then another, this one from Damien. Thank you for today. I stared at those 3 words. Thank you, as if I'd done him a favor instead of signing away my freedom. I typed and deleted 5 responses before settling on, you're welcome. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, I know this isn't what you wanted. I'll try to make it bearable. The message should have made me angry. Instead, it made me sad. For him, for me, for the 2 people we might have been if our fathers hadn't destroyed that possibility 26 years ago. I didn't respond. What could I say? Try harder? It's already unbearable? I'm terrified of you and what I've become. Instead, I went to my window and looked out at Brooklyn, at the lights coming on in apartments where people were living normal lives, making dinner, watching TV, fighting about whose turn it was to do dishes. Small problems. Normal problems. I'd never have that now. The city glittered below, indifferent and vast, and somewhere in Manhattan, my husband was probably standing at his own window, looking at his own city, feeling his own version of this hollow victory. I touched the black sapphire ring. Cool against my skin, heavy with meaning I didn't yet understand. Sapphires are for people who want to be understood. I wondered if Damien Cross had ever been understood by anyone, or if, like me, he'd spent so long building walls that he'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. My phone buzzed one last time. Damien again. Sleep well. Elena. I looked at the message for a long time before responding. You too. It was a lie. Neither of us would sleep well tonight. But it was the kind of lie married people told each other, the small fiction that made cohabitation possible. I was learning already. Chapter 4. The First Crack. Damien. The penthouse was too quiet. I stood at the piano at 2:47 a.m., not playing, just resting my fingers on the keys like they might tell me something I didn't already know. Outside, Manhattan glittered in the dark. 8 million people sleeping or pretending to, while I stood in my glass tower and tried to remember the last time I felt anything resembling peace. The marriage certificate sat on my desk, signed, sealed, legally binding. Elena Morgan was now Elena Cross, though I suspected she'd keep using her maiden name for as long as I allowed it. Another small rebellion in a war she didn't realize she'd already lost. Except I pressed down on middle C. The note hung in the air, pure and accusatory. Except she had negotiated, had walked into my office with no leverage and manufactured some anyway, had identified the one thing I needed, legitimacy, the appearance of normalcy, and used it to carve out autonomy, salary, veto power, protection for her father's company. I'd let her think she'd won those concessions. But the truth was more complicated. The truth was that when she stood in my office and said, "I'm not brave, I'm desperate," I'd seen something in her eyes that I recognized. The same trapped animal look I'd seen in my own mirror for 20 years. And for just a moment, I'd wanted to tell her she could leave, that I'd find another way to settle the debt, to close the wound my father's death had left. But I didn't, because Damien Cross didn't let people walk away, didn't show weakness, didn't allow sentiment to interfere with contracts. I played a chord progression, Chopin, Nocturne in C-sharp minor, my mother's favorite. She used to play on the upright piano in our apartment before my father's business collapsed, before the drinking started, before everything went to hell. Diamonds are for people who want to be seen. Sapphires are for people who want to be understood. I'd told Elena that in the car, and immediately regretted it. Too much information. Too revealing. But she'd asked about the ring, and the answer had come out before I could stop it. The black sapphire had cost $40,000. I'd spent an hour with a jeweler, rejecting diamond after diamond because they were too obvious, too expected. The sapphire was different, dark and complex, with depths you only saw when the light hit it right. Like Elena herself, I stopped playing, poured 2 fingers of Macallan, and carried it to the window. Tomorrow night was the gala, Cross Ventures' annual fundraiser, where I'd parade my new wife in front of investors, board members, and the Manhattan elite who'd been speculating about my personal life for years. They'd see Elena on my arm and make assumptions. Trophy wife, gold digger, another transaction in a life built on transactions. Let them assume, as long as they saw a marriage, not a contract, a choice, not coercion. My phone lit up on the piano. Text from Carolyn. Style is confirmed for Elena's apartment. 9 a.m. 6 dress options, all appropriate. Shoes and accessories included. I typed back. Make sure she has veto power over the selection. Her choice, not ours. 3 dots. Then understood, though that's not in the prenup. I know. I set down the phone. The prenup had 47 pages of control clauses, because control was all I knew. But watching Elena sign it yesterday, seeing her hand shake slightly on each signature, I'd felt something crack in my chest. Something I thought was sealed over years ago. Guilt, maybe, or a recognition that I'd become exactly what my father had feared, a man who measured worth in dollars and contracts, who'd forgotten there were things that couldn't be bought or negotiated. The scotch burned going down. I welcomed it. At 3:15 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went to my home office. Pulled up Morgan Tech's financials, the files I'd been reviewing for weeks. The company was bleeding money, had been for years. Thomas Morgan had been a brilliant engineer, but a terrible businessman. He'd poured everything into R&D, neglected sales and marketing, made promises to investors he couldn't keep, just like his partnership with my father. Big dreams, poor execution, and someone else left holding the debt. But the technology was solid. The encryption algorithm Morgan had developed, the one he'd stolen from my father, was actually groundbreaking. With proper funding and management, Morgan Tech could be worth $50 million in 3 years. I'd planned to strip it for parts, absorb the patents, fire the employees, erase Thomas Morgan's name from the industry. Now I was keeping it operational. For Elena, I closed the files and opened a different folder. The one I hadn't looked at in 5 years. The one my therapist had recommended I delete. Photos of my father. before the drinking, before the collapse. Robert Cross in his prime, confident, smiling, standing in front of the original Cross Ventures office with my mother beside him. I was maybe 7 in the photo, holding my father's hand, believing the world was safe because he was in it. The next photo, 3 years later, my father gaunt, hollow-eyed, standing in a studio apartment that smelled like failure. I'd taken that one myself, though I didn't remember why. Documentation, maybe. Evidence that we'd fallen. The last photo, my father's funeral. Closed casket. 14 people in attendance. I'd worn a suit that didn't fit and made a promise over his grave that I'd rebuild everything Thomas Morgan had destroyed, that I'd make the Cross name mean something again. I'd kept that promise. Cross Ventures was worth $8 billion. I had homes in 3 cities, a car collection, investments that generated more passive income than most people earned in a lifetime. But I still woke up at 2:47 a.m., playing Chopin in an empty penthouse, feeling nothing. My phone buzzed. Text from Elena. Can't sleep either? I stared at the message. It was 3:34 a.m. She should be exhausted. We both should be. But here we were, 2 insomniacs bound by contract, reaching out across the dark. I typed, "Piano helps. Usually. 3 dots. I heard you playing yesterday. Through the walls at City Hall. You're good. My mother taught me. Before she died. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago." The dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, does it get easier? The grief? I looked at the photo of my father's funeral, at 14-year-old me trying not to cry in an ill-fitting suit. No, you just get better at carrying it. A long pause. Then, that's what I was afraid of. I should have ended the conversation there. Should have maintained distance, kept the boundaries clear. But something in her message, the raw honesty of it, made me type, "Were you afraid of Elena?" The response came quickly. Everything. You. This marriage. Losing myself. Becoming someone I don't recognize. You won't. How do you know? Because you negotiated a counterproposal when you had no leverage. Because you're texting me at 3 a.m. instead of pretending everything's fine. Because you're stronger than you think. The dots appeared and disappeared for almost a minute. Finally, are you trying to be nice to me? Despite everything, the hour, the situation, the weight of what I'd done, I almost smiled. Is it working? I'm not sure. It's confusing. Good. Keep me on my toes. Damien? Yes? Thank you. For the ring. For what you said about your mother. For this conversation. I looked at the black sapphire on my own hand. The matching band I'd had made but hadn't mentioned. Platinum, simple, with a small sapphire inset that caught the light. I'd put it on after the ceremony. Taken it off. Put on again. It sat on my desk now, next to the marriage certificate. Get some sleep? Elena, tomorrow's going to be long. You too. I set down the phone and picked up the ring. Slid it onto my left hand. It fit perfectly, because I'd had it sized 3 times until it was exactly right. The weight of it felt strange. Foreign, like admitting something I wasn't ready to admit. At 4:02 a.m., I went back to the piano and played the rest of the nocturne. Play it the way my mother had taught me. With feeling, not just technical precision. Let the notes fill the empty penthouse. Let them say what I couldn't. When I finished, my phone lit up one last time. That was beautiful. She'd been listening. Somehow, across the city, Elena had been listening. I didn't respond. Didn't know how to. Instead, I played another piece. Rachmaninoff this time, complex and melancholy. Played until my fingers ached and the sky outside started to lighten. Played until I could almost believe that marrying Elena Morgan had been about more than revenge. Elena, the stylist, arrived at 9 a.m. sharp with 6 garment bags, 3 shoe boxes, and an assistant who looked like she subsisted entirely on green juice and judgment. Mrs. Cross. The stylist, Dominique, according to her business card, air-kissed both my cheeks like we were old friends. Damien said you'd need options for tonight's gala. I brought a range of styles. Let's find your perfect look. Mrs. Cross. The name still felt like borrowed clothes that didn't quite fit. They'd transformed my tiny living room into a makeshift boutique, hanging dresses on a portable rack, arranging shoes and accessories on my coffee table. Each dress probably cost more than my monthly rent. This one first. Dominique held up a crimson gown, backless and dramatic. Valentino, very bold, makes a statement. I took it into my bedroom and changed. The dress fit like it had been made for me, which, knowing Damien's attention to detail, it probably had been. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. The woman staring back was elegant, expensive, the kind of person who belonged on Damien Cross's arm. I hated it. Let's see. Dominique called. I walked out. Both women's faces lit up. Stunning. Dominique breathed. Absolutely stunning. Damien will die. I'll try the others, I said. The second dress was navy, more conservative. The third was emerald green with a plunging neckline. The fourth was blush pink, soft and romantic. Each one transformed me into a different version of the woman I was supposed to become. The fifth dress was black. Simple, a column of silk that skimmed my body without clinging, with a high neck and long sleeves that made me look elegant rather than exposed. Sophisticated. Strong. When I looked in the mirror this time, I saw myself. Not a trophy wife or a gold digger or an asset. Just Elena, in a dress that made her feel like she could survive whatever tonight would bring. This one, I said. Dominique frowned. It's beautiful, but perhaps a bit understated. The red or the emerald would photograph better. This one, I repeated. She exchanged a glance with her assistant. Mr. Cross did say it was your choice. He did. They packed up the other dresses, left the black one hanging in my closet, along with shoes and a small clutch. After they left, I made coffee and looked at my phone. Text from Damien. Stylist said you chose the black dress. Good choice. You told them it was my decision. I did. Why? The dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, because I'm trying. I stared at those 3 words. I'm trying. Not an apology. Not an excuse. Just acknowledgement that this arrangement required effort from both of us. Trying to be less controlling. Trying to remember you're a person, not a contract. The honesty of it stole my breath. I sat down on my couch, phone in hand, trying to reconcile this Damien, the one who texted at 3 a.m., who played Chopin, who admitted he was trying, with a man who blackmailed me into marriage. That's a start, I typed. What time should I pick you up tonight? The prenup says you're sending a car at 7:30. I know what the prenup says. I'm asking what you prefer. I thought about arriving separately, maintaining distance. Then I thought about walking into a room full of Manhattan's elite alone, without backup. You can pick me up. 7:30 is fine. I'll be there. I set down the phone and looked around my apartment. Tomorrow I'd start packing. Tomorrow I'd move into Damien's penthouse, into the guest wing with its 3 bedrooms and private bathroom and the illusion of autonomy. Tomorrow I'd begin a performance of being Mrs. Damien Cross. But today I was still just Elena Morgan, sitting in her shabby apartment, drinking cheap coffee, trying to figure out how to survive a marriage that felt like a beautiful cage. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Daniel Yates. Trust documents ready for your signature. Can you stop by my office this afternoon? 2 p.m.? Perfect. See you then. The trust. My insurance policy. The thing that would protect Morgan Tech's employees if something happened to me. If Damien decided I was more trouble than I was worth. I pushed the thought away and went to take a shower. The hot water helped, washing away the residual feeling of being handled, assessed, transformed into something marketable. When I got out, there was another text from Damien. I know tonight will be difficult, but I'll be with you. You won't have to face them alone. I read it 3 times, searching for the trap, the angle, the way it would be used against me later, but there was nothing. Just a simple statement that sounded almost like support. Thank you, I typed back. Elena? Yes? The black dress was the right choice. It suits you. I looked at the dress hanging in my closet. Elegant, strong, mine. How do you know? You haven't seen it on me. I don't need to. I know you. The presumption should have angered me. Instead, it made me curious. Did he know me? Or did he just know how to read people? How to say the right thing to keep them compliant? You don't know me at all, I sent. Then I'm looking forward to learning. At 7:30 p.m., I stood in front of my building in the black dress, the expensive shoes that hurt my feet, and the small clutch that held exactly 3 things: my phone, lipstick, and the business card divorce attorney I found online, just in case. A black town car pulled up. The driver got out, started to open the back door. Then Damien emerged instead. He wore a tuxedo that probably cost more than my college tuition, his dark hair styled back, his gray eyes finding mine immediately. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the sidewalk. "You look beautiful," he said finally. "You look like you're about to close a business deal." "I am. You're the product." He said it matter-of-factly, then seemed to hear himself. That came out wrong. Did it? He crossed the sidewalk to stand in front of me. Up close, I could smell his cologne, cedar and smoke, expensive and austere. I meant that we're selling an image tonight. A marriage. People will be watching us, judging us, looking for cracks. We need to present a united front. So, I'm a prop in your performance. We're both props in performance we didn't choose. He offered his arm. "Shall we?" I looked at his arm, at the ring on his left hand that matched mine. The black sapphire caught the streetlight, turning it into something dark and beautiful. "You're wearing a ring," I said. "Married men wear rings." The contract didn't require it. No, but I thought. He stopped, something flickering across his face. I thought it would look more authentic if we both wore them. I slipped my hand through his arm. His muscles tensed slightly under the tuxedo fabric. "Damien?" "Yes." "I'm terrified." The admission came out before I could stop it. But standing there on the sidewalk, about to get into a car that would take me to a gala full of people who judge me, assess me, decide whether I was worthy of being Damien Cross's wife. The fear was too big to hide. His hand covered mine on his arm. "I know, but I meant what I said. You won't face them alone. Why are you being nice to me?" "Because you asked me to try. So I'm trying." We got into the car. The driver closed the door, sealing us into the leather and luxury cocoon. Damien sat close enough that our shoulders touched, close enough that I could feel the heat of him through the tuxedo. "There will be reporters," he said as we pulled into traffic. "Photographers. They'll ask how we met, how long we've been together, when the wedding was. I'll handle most of it, but they may direct questions at you." What do I say? "The truth, mostly." He looked at me. "Your father and mine were business partners. We reconnected after your father's death. Things moved quickly. We realized we didn't want to wait." "That's not the truth." "It's close enough." His hand found mine in the space between us. The trick to lying is to stay as close to the truth as possible. Makes it easier to remember your story. You're very good at this. I've had practice. The car wound through Manhattan traffic, heading toward the Plaza Hotel where the gala was being held. Through the tinted windows, I watched the city pass. People in normal clothes living normal lives, unaware that in this car, 2 people were preparing to perform a marriage that was really a contract, a love story that was really revenge. "Elena?" Damien's voice was quiet. "Yes." The black dress was the right choice. You look like yourself. That's more important than looking like what people expect. I turned to face him. In the dim light of the car, his features were softer, less severe, almost human. "Who are you?" I asked. "The man who blackmailed me into marriage, or the man who plays Chopin at 3 a.m.? "Both." "Neither." He looked away. "I don't know anymore." The car pulled up to the plaza. Outside, I could see the red carpet, the photographers, the crowd of people in evening wear. My heart started racing. "I can't do this," I whispered. "Yes, you can." Damien's hand tightened on mine. "Look at me." I did. His gray eyes were intense, focused entirely on my face. "You're Elena Cross now. That name carries weight. Power. No one in that room can touch you, because you're mine." He paused. "And I protect what's mine." The possessiveness should have frightened me. Instead, it felt like armor. The driver opened the door. Sound rushed in cameras, voices, the chaos of a Manhattan charity event. Damien got out first, then offered his hand. I took it. The cameras started flashing immediately. Mr. Cross, who's your date? Damien, over here. Is this the mystery woman? Damien's arm went around my waist, pulling me close. He smiled for the cameras, not his usual cold expression, but something warmer, almost genuine. Everyone, this is my wife, Elena, he said. We were married yesterday. The cameras went insane. Damien leaned down, his lips close to my ear. Smile, Elena. Show them you chose this. So I smiled. Let the cameras capture me in my black dress, in Damien's arms, wearing his ring and his name. Let them see what they want to see, a whirlwind romance, a powerful man, a beautiful woman. Let them believe the lie. Because the truth, that I was trapped, that this was survival, that I was terrified of the man whose hand rested on my waist, wasn't something you could photograph. We walked the red carpet together, Damien's hand never leaving my body. Possessive, territorial, claiming me in front of everyone who mattered in his world. And I let him, because I'd signed the contract, because I'd made my choice, because sometimes survival meant to form in a role, so well that even you started to believe it. At the entrance to the ballroom, Damien stopped, turned to face me. His hand came up to cup my jaw, his thumb brushing my cheek. Thank you, he said quietly, for doing this. Then he kissed me, not the chaste brush of lips from City Hall. This was deeper, slower, designed to the cameras, but feeling like something more. His hand tangled in my hair, his body pressed against mine, and for just a moment, I forgot we were performing. For just a moment, it felt real. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark, unreadable. Ready? He asked. No, I would never be ready. Yes, I said. We walked into the ballroom together, and the performance began. Chapter 5, The Thaw. Elena. The ballroom was a cathedral of wealth, crystal chandeliers refracting light into 1,000 prisms, tables draped in ivory silk, centerpieces of white orchids that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. The crowd was Manhattan's elite in their natural habitat. Confident, beautiful, dangerous in a way that only people with unlimited resources could be. I felt their eyes on me immediately, assessing, calculating, determining whether I was worthy of standing beside Damien Cross. His hand remained at the small of my back, warm through the silk of my dress. Possessive, yes, but also grounding. A reminder that I wasn't alone in this performance. Damien, a man in his 60s, approached, silver-haired and distinguished, with the kind of tan that came from owning a yacht. Congratulations are in order, I hear. Richard. Damien's voice shifted into something smoother, more polished. His public voice. Thank you. Richard Ashford, this is my wife, Elena. Wife. The word still felt foreign in my mouth, but I extended my hand. It's nice to meet you. Richard's handshake was firm, his eyes sharp as he studied me. Ashford Capital. I've known Damien since he was rebuilding Cross Ventures from nothing. He turned back to Damien. You kept this one quiet. When did this happen? Recently. We didn't want the media circus. Damien's thumb traced a small circle on my back, a gesture that looked affectionate but felt like a reminder. Stay close. Play the part. Smart man. Though I suspect you won't avoid the circus for long. Richard smiled at me. What do you do, Elena? The question I'd been dreading. I work in tech. My father founded Morgan Tech, data encryption systems. Something flickered in Richard's expression. Recognition. Thomas Morgan's daughter. I heard about his passing. My condolences. Thank you. And now you've married the man who... He stopped himself, glancing at Damien. Well, small world. The implication hung in the air. Richard knew, maybe not the details of the contract, but enough to understand this marriage wasn't a simple love story. Very small, Damien said, his voice carrying an edge. If you'll excuse us, Richard, I need to introduce Elena to a few board members. We move away before Richard could respond. I kept my smile fixed, my posture perfect, even as my heart hammered against my ribs. He knows, I whispered. Richard knows everything. It's his business model. Damien's hand slid to my waist, pulling me closer as we navigated through the crowd. But he also knows better than to ask questions I won't answer. We stopped at a high-top table where 3 women stood holding champagne flutes, their dresses designer, their jewelry real. They turned as we approached, and I saw the moment they registered me. The new wife, the interloper, the woman who'd somehow landed Manhattan's most eligible bachelor. Ladies. Damien's smile was charming, practiced. I'd like you to meet my wife, Elena. Elena, this is Victoria Chun, Margaret Hastings, and Sienna Rothschild. Victoria was the first to speak. Tall, elegant, with a kind of bone structure that suggested excellent genes and better cosmetic surgery. Your wife. How unexpected. Her eyes raked over me, cataloging every detail. I didn't realize you were seeing anyone, Damien. I prefer to keep my personal life private. Clearly. Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. Elena, was it? How did you two meet? I felt Damien tense, slightly beside me. This was a test. Victoria knew something or suspected something, and she was probing for weakness. Our fathers were business partners, I said, keeping my voice steady. We reconnected after my father passed away. Damien was very supportive during a difficult time. How romantic. Victoria took a sip of champagne. A whirlwind courtship? When you know, you know. Damien's arm tightened around my waist. If you'll excuse us, I see Senator Morrison. Elena, shall we? He steered me away before Victoria could respond. Once we were out of earshot, he leaned down, his breath warm against my ear. You did well. She hates me. She hates everyone. Don't take it personally. We spent the next hour circulating, Damien introducing me to investors, board members, politicians. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Surprise at the marriage, thinly veiled curiosity about how I'd landed Damien Cross, careful assessment of whether I belonged in their world. I smiled until my face hurt, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, let Damien's hand rest on my waist, my hip, the small of my back, constant physical reminders that I was his, that he'd claimed me, that this marriage was real enough to display in public. By the time we sat down for dinner, I was exhausted from performing. Our table included 2 other couples, venture capitalists and their wives, all perfectly polished, all clearly curious about the mysterious Elena Cross. The conversation flowed around me. Market trends, upcoming IPOs, the political climate's effect on tech valuations. I contributed when asked, kept my answers brief, and tried not to think about how much the wine in my glass probably cost. Damien's hand found mine under the table. Squeeze once. A small gesture, but it steadied me. So Elena, one of the wives, said, Catherine, I think, what are your plans now? Will you continue working or? The unspoken question, are you a trophy wife or do you have actual value? I'll be taking a seat on Morgan Tech's board. I said, the company my father founded. I want to ensure his vision continues. How admirable. Catherine's smile was patronizing. Though I imagine being married to Damien will keep you quite busy. He's very demanding. Damien's hand tightened on mine. Elena has her own ambitions. I support them fully. The word should have sounded hollow. Instead, they carry conviction. I glanced at him, surprised, and found him watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. After dinner came the speeches. The charity's director thanking Cross Ventures for their continued support. Damien giving brief remarks about the importance of tech education. He was polished, confident, the kind of speaker who commanded attention without effort. When he returned to the table, he held out his hand. Dance with me? It wasn't a question. The band was playing something slow and romantic, the kind of song designed for couples to sway together and pretend the world outside the ballroom didn't exist. Damien led me to the dance floor, his hand finding the small of my back, his other hand clasping mine. We moved together, and I was surprised by how natural it felt, how easily we fell into rhythm. You're doing well, he said quietly. Better than I expected. You expected me to fail? I expected you to run. His gray eyes searched my face. You still could. The prenup has an escape clause. If you leave within the first 30 days, The penalties are minimal. You'd lose the salary, but Morgan Tech would remain operational for 2 years. I stared at him. You're telling me this now? I'm telling you that you have a choice. You've always had a choice. His hand tightened on my waist. I want you to stay because you choose to, not because you're trapped. I am trapped. Maybe, but maybe there's a difference between a cage and a shelter. He pulled me closer until we were almost chest to chest. I'm not good at this, at being human, but I'm trying, Elena. I need you to know that. Around us, other couples danced. The chandeliers cast moving shadows across the floor. The music swelled, romantic and false, and I realized something. Damien Cross was lonely. Beneath the money and the power and the carefully constructed armor, he was just a man who'd spent 20 years building walls so high he'd forgotten how to let anyone in. Why are you trying? I asked. Really, not the contract, not the business reasons. Why do you care whether I stay or go? He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because when I look at you, I see someone who's been hurt by their father's mistakes. And I understand that. I've lived that. His hand moved to cup the back of my neck, intimate and grounding, because you're the first person in 20 years who's looked at me and seen a person instead of a transaction. Damien. Mr. Cross? A woman's voice interrupted. I turned to see Carolyn approaching, her expression carefully neutral. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation that requires your attention. Damien's jaw tightened. Can it wait? I'm afraid not. He looked at me, something like regret crossing his face. I'll be right back. Stay here. Don't let Victoria corner you alone. Then he was gone, following Carolyn toward the ballroom's exit, leaving me standing on the dance floor like a ship without an anchor. I made my way back to our table, grateful for the momentary reprieve. But before I could sit down, Victoria materialized beside me. Elena, walk with me. It wasn't a request. She led me toward the terrace, a sprawling outdoor space overlooking Central Park, currently empty except for a few smokers. The November air was cold against my bare arms, but Victoria seemed immune to it. I'll be direct, she said, turning to face me. Damien and I were engaged 3 years ago. Did he tell you that? The words hit like stones. No, I thought not. Victoria's smile was sharp. We were together for 2 years. I thought we'd get married, start a family. Then one day he called it off. No explanation, no discussion. Just done. I'm sorry. Don't be. I dodged a bullet. She leaned against the railing, her eyes assessing. Damien Cross is incapable of love. Elena, he's a machine wrapped in expensive suits. Everything is a transaction to him. Everyone is either useful or disposable. Why are you telling me this? Because you seem nice, and I'd hate to see him destroy you the way he destroys everything else. Victoria pulled out her phone. Show me a photo. This was taken 2 weeks ago. Recognize the woman? The photo showed Damien at a restaurant, leaning close to a beautiful blonde. They looked intimate. Familiar. That's his attorney, Victoria said. Melissa Grant. They've been sleeping together on and off for years. Didn't stop when he proposed to me. Probably won't stop now that he's married to you. I stared at the photo, trying to process. Why would he marry me if? Because you're not a wife. You're a business arrangement. Victoria pocketed her phone. Whatever he told you, whatever promises he made, it's all calculated. Damien doesn't do anything without a reason, and that reason is never love. She walked away, leaving me alone on the terrace with the cold and the doubt and the image of Damien, with another woman burned into my mind. I stood there for 5 minutes, maybe 10, trying to organize my thoughts, trying to separate what I knew from what Victoria wanted me to believe. There you are. Damien's voice behind me. I've been looking for you. I turned. He'd loosened his bow tie, and there was tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. What was the situation? Nothing important. A vendor issue. He noticed my expression. What's wrong? Victoria showed me a photo. You and a woman named Melissa Grant. At a restaurant 2 weeks ago. Something flickered across his face. Not quite guilt, more like resignation. My attorney. We had a business dinner. She said you've been sleeping together. We did. Past tense. Years ago. He moved closer. Victoria is trying to manipulate you. She's angry that I ended our engagement, and she wants you to be angry too. Are you still sleeping with her? With Melissa? No. The answer was immediate. Absolute. I haven't touched another woman since the day I decided to enforce the contract with your father. Since the day I knew I'd marry you. Why should I believe you? Because I don't lie. He reached for my hand. I let him take it. I manipulate. I control. I use contracts and leverage in fear. But I don't lie. There's no point. The truth is usually more effective. I looked at our joined hands. His ring caught the light from the ballroom. Victoria said you're incapable of love. She's probably right. The honesty of it stole my breath. Then what is this? What are we doing? I don't know. He pulled me closer until we were standing the way we'd been on the dance floor. I know what we're supposed to be, a contractual arrangement, a business transaction. But when I'm with you, I feel something I haven't felt in 20 years. What? Uncertain. He touched my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. You make me uncertain, Elena, and I don't know if that's terrifying or exhilarating. Both, I whispered. It's both. He kissed me then, not the performance kiss on the red carpet, but something slower. Searching, his hand tangled in my hair, his body warm against mine in the cold night air. When we broke apart, his eyes were dark, intense. Come home with me, he said, not to the guest wing. To my room. Let me show you I'm trying. Every rational part of my brain screamed no. This was too fast. Too dangerous. Too much like falling into a trap disguised as tenderness. But I thought about the way he'd played Chopin at 3 a.m., the way he'd given me veto power over the dress, the way his hand had steadied me all night, grounded me when I felt like I might float away, the way he'd admitted he was uncertain. Okay, I said. We left the gala early, Damien's hand never leaving mine as we navigated through the crowd, as we climbed into the town car, as we rode the elevator up to his penthouse. The doors opened directly into his home, all glass and clean lines, and the view of Manhattan I'd seen in photos, but never in person. It was beautiful and sterile, like a museum exhibit of how wealthy people lived. Drink? Damien asked, heading toward the bar cart. Yes. He poured 2 glasses of scotch, expensive, probably older than me, handed me one. Our fingers brushed, and I felt that same electric charge the first time we'd touched. I need to tell you something, he said, about Morgan Tech. I tensed. What about it? I've been funding it since your father died. A shell company, routed through 3 subsidiaries, so it wouldn't show up in your research. He took a sip of scotch. Your father's employees, all 3 of them, are still getting paid. The office lease is current. The patents are protected. Why? Because destroying it felt wrong. He looked away. I told myself it was strategic, that keeping the company operational increased its value. But the truth is, I couldn't do it. Couldn't erase your father's life's work, even though he erased mine. I set down my glass, crossed the space between us, looked up at this man who blackmailed me into marriage but couldn't bring himself to destroy my father's legacy. You're not a monster, I said quietly. I'm not sure what I am anymore. Then let's figure out together. I kissed him, not because the contract required it, not because we were performing for cameras, but because I wanted to, because beneath the armor and the control and the walls, Damien Cross was just a broken person trying to survive his own history. Like me, he responded immediately, his hands coming up to frame my face, his kiss deepening. There was hunger in it, yes, but also something gentler, something that felt almost like hope. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. I don't know how to do this, he said. How to be a husband. How to be human. Neither do I. We'll figure out as we go. He pulled back slightly, studying my face. The guest wing. I don't want the guest wing. The words came out before I could second guess them. Not tonight. Tonight, I want to be your wife. Really your wife. Elena, I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Not because of the contract, but because I want to understand who you are beneath all the armor. I touched his face, felt the tension in his jaw. Show me, Damien. Show me the person you are when you're not performing. For a long moment, he just looked at me. Then he took my hand and led me through the penthouse, down a hallway I hadn't seen before, to a door at the end. His bedroom was simpler than I'd expected. A massive bed, yes, but also bookshelves lined with worn paperbacks, a desk covered in papers, a window seat overlooking the city. It looked lived in. Human. I wasn't expecting company, he said, almost shy. Good. I don't want a performance. I want you. He kissed me again, slower this time, his hands moving to the zipper of my dress. Tell me to stop. Anytime. I'll stop. I know. The dress pulled at my feet. His jacket followed, then his shirt, until we were skin to skin. Two people who'd been strangers a week ago now learning each other's bodies like a language neither of us quite spoke. We moved to the bed. His touch was careful, almost reverent, as if he was afraid I might break or disappear. I see you, I whispered against his mouth. Damien Cross, I see you. Something cracked in his expression. He buried his face in my neck, and I felt the shudder that ran through him. We made love slowly, carefully, with a tenderness that fell at odds with everything that had brought us to this moment. And when it was over, when we lay tangled together in his bed with Manhattan glittering outside the window, I realized something. This wasn't the consummation clause. This wasn't the contract. This was two broken people choosing each other, even if just for one night. Damien's hand found mine in the dark. Squeeze once. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For seeing me. For staying. For giving me a chance to be more than what I've been. I turned to face him. His gray eyes were softer in the dim light, more vulnerable than I'd ever seen them. We're both more than our father's mistakes, I said. Maybe that's where we start. He pulled me closer until I was tucked against his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. Stay, he whispered, not in the guest wing. Here, with me. Okay. We fell asleep like that. Two people who'd been enemies becoming something else. Something fragile and uncertain and possibly doomed. But for tonight, it was enough. Chapter 6, The Breaking Point. Damien. I woke at 5:47 a.m. to find Elena still asleep beside me. Her dark hair spread across my pillow, one hand curled under her cheek. Morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting her skin in shades of gold and shadow. A living chiaroscuro. I should have felt triumphant. The contract was consummated. The marriage was legally binding, non-voidable. Elena was mine in every way that mattered. Instead, I felt terrified. Because sometime between the gala and this moment, the arrangement had shifted. What started as revenge had become something I didn't have a name for. Something that made my chest tight when I looked at her. Something that made me want to protect rather than possess. I'd told her I was trying. What I hadn't told her was that I didn't know how to be the man she deserved. 20 years of building walls, of turning every interaction into a transaction, of measuring worth in contracts and leverage. None of it had prepared me for waking up next to someone who'd chosen to stay. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I grabbed it before it could wake her. Text from Carolyn. Victoria Chun contacted page 6. They're running a story Monday about your contract marriage. She has documentation. Ice flooded my veins. I slipped out of bed carefully, grabbed my robe, and stepped into the hallway before calling Carolyn. How bad? I asked when she answered. Bad. She has photos of the original contract, the one with the marriage clause. She's claiming you coerced Elena, that the whole thing is a business arrangement masquerading as romance. Carolyn's voice was grim. Page 6 wants a comment by end of day. If we don't respond, they run with Victoria's version. I closed my eyes. Victoria. Of course. I'd ended our engagement 3 years ago when I realized she was more interested in the cross name than the man carrying it. She'd taken it badly. Threats, tears, accusations. I'd paid her off, signed an NDA, thought it was finished. Apparently not. What does she want? I asked. $10 million to bury the story, and a public apology for humiliating her. No, Damien, I won't pay blackmail, and I sure as hell won't apologize for refusing to marry someone I didn't love. I walked to the living room windows, looked out at Manhattan waking up, let her publish. Silence on the other end. Then, you understand what this means? The media will crucify you. Elena will be dragged through every tabloid. Investors will ask questions. The board. I know. I did know. But the alternative, giving Victoria power over me again, letting her control the narrative, was worse. Draft a statement. Elena and I married for personal reasons. The contract was a formality to settle estate matters. Our relationship is genuine. Is it? The question hung in the air. I thought about Elena asleep in my bed, about the way she looked at me last night and said, "I see you," about the crack that had opened in my chest when she'd chosen to stay. "Yes," I said quietly. "It is." "Then you need to tell her, before the story breaks. She deserves to know what's coming." I ended the call and stood at the window for a long time, watching the sun climb higher, trying to figure out how to explain to Elena that the fragile thing we built last night was about to be tested by fire. When I returned to the bedroom, she was awake, sitting up against the headboard with the sheet pulled to her chest. Her hair was mussed, her lips slightly swollen from last night's kisses, and she looked so beautiful it hurt. "Morning," she said, her voice uncertain. "I wasn't sure if you wanted me to stay." I crossed the bed, sat on the edge. "I want you to stay." Relief flickered across her face. "Okay, good." Because leaving seemed complicated, and I'm not sure where my dress ended up. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Living room, along with my dignity. She laughed. A real laugh, unguarded, and something in my chest loosened. Then she noticed my expression. "What's wrong?" No point in delaying it. I told her I didn't lie. Victoria leaked the contract to page 6. They're running a story Monday claiming I coerced you into marriage, that the whole thing is a business arrangement. The color drained from her face. "How much of the contract?" "Enough. The marriage clause, the debt structure, probably the prenup." I took her hand. "She wants $10 million to kill the story." I told Carolyn no. "Why?" Elena's voice was sharp. $10 million is nothing to you. Pay her. Make this go away. Because if I pay her now, she'll come back for more. Blackmailers always do. I squeezed her hand. And because I won't let her control us. Won't let her turn what we're building into something dirty. What we're building? Elena pulled her hand away. "Damien, we had sex once. That doesn't erase the fact that you blackmailed me into this marriage. I know that. Do you?" She stood, wrapping the sheet around herself like armor. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're making decisions that affect both of us without consulting me. Again, I'm trying to protect you. I don't need protection. I need partnership." She found her dress, started pulling it on with jerky, angry movements. "You said you were trying. You said you wanted me to choose you. But the first time something goes wrong, you revert to the same controlling bullshit." "Elena." "No." She turned to face me, and I saw tears in her eyes. Angry tears. "You don't get to play the hero here. You created the situation. You enforced that contract. You trapped me in a marriage I didn't want, and now you're surprised that someone's calling you out for it." The words hit like physical blows. Because she was right. All of it was true. "What do you want me to do?" I asked quietly. "I want you to ask me what I think. I want you to treat me like an equal instead of possession." She grabbed her shoes. "I want you to remember that I'm a person, not a contract clause." "I know you're a person." "Do you?" "Because last night felt real. This morning feels like I'm back in your office, being told what's going to happen to me." She walked toward the door, then stopped. "I need space. I'm going back to my apartment." Panic flared in my chest. "The prenup says." "I don't give a fuck what the prenup says." Her voice was cold. "I'm leaving. Try to stop me, And I'll make sure page 6 gets an exclusive interview about exactly how coercive this marriage really is. She left. I stood in my bedroom, surrounded by the evidence of last night, rumpled sheets, her scent on my pillow, the ghost of her warm still in the air, and felt the walls I'd spent 20 years building slam back into place. Elena, I made it to the elevator before the tears started, held them back until the doors closed, until I was alone in the glass box descending 73 floors, watching Manhattan shrink below me. Then I broke, because last night had felt real. Damien's hands on my skin, his vulnerability when he'd said, "I see you," the way he'd held me afterward like I was something precious. All of it felt like maybe, possibly, we could build something genuine from the wreckage of our father's mistakes. This morning shattered that illusion. He'd made a unilateral decision about Victoria's blackmail. Hadn't asked my opinion. Hadn't considered that maybe I'd want to pay the money, make the problem disappear. Just decided, the way he decided everything, and expected me to fall in line. I protect what's mine. That's what he'd said at the gala. And I'd let myself believe it meant something other than possession. Let myself believe that it could coexist with partner. Stupid. The elevator doors open onto the lobby. I walked past the security desk, past the early morning business people with their coffee and their briefcases, out into a Manhattan Sunday that looked exactly the same as yesterday, even though everything had changed. My phone buzzed. "Damien, please come back. We need to talk." I deleted the message. Another buzz. "I'm sorry. You're right. I should have asked you first." I turned off my phone. A cab dropped me at my Williamsburg apartment 20 minutes later. The building looked shabbier than I remembered. Peeling paint, cracked steps, the smell of garbage from the alley. My life before Damien. My life that was supposed to be temporary. Inside, the apartment was exactly as I'd left it. Boxes half-packed. My cheap furniture. The water stain on the ceiling. I'd been meaning to report for 6 months. I sat on my second-hand couch and finally let myself feel the full weight of what I'd done. I'd slept with him, consummated the marriage, made it legally binding and non-voidable. Worse, I'd started to care about him. Somewhere between the contract signing and last night, Damien Cross had stopped being just a man who trapped me and become someone I wanted to understand. Someone whose loneliness matched my own. Someone who played Chopin at 3 a.m. and admitted he didn't know how to be human. And this morning, he'd reminded me why that was dangerous. My phone buzzed again. I'd turn it back on out of habit. This time it wasn't Damien. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered. "Hello? Elena Cross?" A woman's voice. Professional. "This is Melissa Grant. I'm Damien's attorney. We need to talk." The woman from Victoria's photo. The one Damien claimed he'd stopped sleeping with. About what? About Monday's story. Victoria sent me a preview. She's claiming Damien coerced you into marriage through financial manipulation, that you had no choice. A pause. I need to know if that's true. I thought about the contract, the 48-hour deadline, the choice between marriage and watching my father's legacy dissolve. It's complicated. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. I stood, walked to my window. "Why are you calling me? Shouldn't you be talking to Damien?" I tried. He's not answering. Melissa's voice softened slightly. "Look, I've known Damien for 8 years. Worked with him through some of his worst moments. He's controlling, yes. Ruthless, absolutely. But he's not a monster. If you tell me he forced you into this marriage, I'll help you get out. Quietly, quickly, with enough money to start over. Why would you do that? Because despite what Victoria thinks, I actually care about Damien. And forcing someone into marriage isn't just illegal. It's the kind of thing that destroys people." She paused. "So I'm asking you directly, did you choose this?" I looked at the black sapphire ring on my left hand, thought about signing the contract, about walking down the aisle at City Hall, about last night when I told Damien I was choosing him. "Yes," I said quietly. "I chose it. Even knowing about the debt, the contract clause, especially knowing that, I chose to save my father's company. I chose to give Damien a chance. I chose to stay last night when I could have left." My voice cracked. I chose all of it, Melissa. Even the parts that are destroying me. Silence on the other end. Then, okay, then we fight Victoria together. But I need you to come to my office. Today, we have 24 hours to build a counter-narrative before that story drops. I can't. Yes, you can. Because if you don't, Victoria wins. She destroys Damien's reputation, tanks Cross Venture's stock price, and turns your marriage into a tabloid punchline. Melissa's voice hardened. Is that what you want? No, it wasn't. Because despite this morning's fight, despite the anger and the fear and the feeling of being trapped, I didn't want to watch Damien burn. Didn't want Victoria, a woman who'd never met me, to control the narrative of my life. Text me the address. I said, I'll be there in an hour. Melissa Grant's office was in Midtown, all glass and modern furniture, and the kind of understated wealth that didn't need to announce itself. She met me in the lobby, tall, blonde, beautiful in the way that successful Manhattan women were beautiful, put together, intimidating, nothing like the intimate photo Victoria had shown me. Elena, she extended her hand. Thank you for coming. We rode the elevator in silence. Her office was on the 40th floor, with a view of the Hudson and a desk covered in legal briefs. She gestured to a chair. Coffee? Water? I'm fine. She sat across from me, studying my face the way Damien did, looking for weakness, for leverage, for the truth beneath the performance. Victoria showed you a photo of Damien and me at dinner. Yes, it was a business dinner. We were reviewing the prenuptial agreement before your signing. Melissa pulled out her phone. Show me a different photo. Same restaurant, same night, but zoomed out to show two other people at the table. My associate and his paralegal were there. It wasn't romantic. It was work. I looked at the photo, then at her. Why are you showing me this? Because Victoria's good at manipulating images to tell the story she wants. And I need you to understand that whatever she's claiming about Damien and me, it's not current, it's not relevant, and it's designed to make you doubt him. I don't need Victoria to make me doubt him. He does that himself. Melissa's expression softened. He's not easy. I know that, but he's also not the monster Victoria wants you to believe he is. She pulled out a file. This is what she's planning to leak. I need you to read it. All of it. Then decide if you want to fight back. The file contained photocopies of the original contract, including the marriage clause, annotations in Victoria's handwriting, highlighting the most damaging parts, a draft of the Page 6 article, with quotes from anonymous sources claiming Damien had threatened Elena, that the marriage was a sham, that Cross Ventures was built on coercion and manipulation. It was character assassination, carefully crafted, legally defensible, designed to destroy everything Damien had built. How did she get this? I asked Damien's CFO. He's been feeding her information for months. Financial records, contracts, private correspondence. We think Victoria's been planning this since Damien ended their engagement. Melissa leaned forward. She wants to destroy him, and she's willing to destroy you in the process. I read the article again. Saw my name, my father's name, our story twisted into something ugly. A narrative where I was a victim and Damien was a predator, and our marriage was evidence of everything wrong with wealthy men and the women they controlled. It wasn't entirely untrue, but it wasn't the whole truth either. What do you need from me? I asked. A statement, on record, confirming that you entered the marriage willingly, that Damien didn't coerce you, that the contract was a legal settlement of estate debts. Melissa pulled out a document. It won't kill the story, but it will complicate Victoria's narrative, make it harder for her to claim you're a victim. What if I am a victim? Are you? I thought about last night, about Damien's hands in my hair, his voice when he'd said, I don't know how to do this, about the way he'd held me afterward, like I was the only solid thing in his world. No, I said finally, I'm not a victim. I'm a woman who made an impossible choice and is trying to survive it. Melissa slid the document across the desk. Then let's make sure that's the story people hear. I read the statement carefully. It was clinical, legal, stripped of emotion, but it was accurate. I'd signed the contract. I'd married Damien. I'd chosen to stay. I signed it. What happens now? I asked. Now we release this to page 6 along with evidence that Victoria's source, the CFO, was embezzling from Cross Ventures. We turn the story from billionaire coerces woman into marriage to bitter ex-fiancé attempts corporate sabotage. Melissa stood. It won't be pleasant. You'll still get media attention. But it shifts the narrative from victim to participant. Will it work? Honestly, I don't know. But it's better than letting Victoria control the story. She walked me to the door. Elena, for what it's worth, I think you're good for him. Damien's been a machine for so long. I've forgotten he was human. You remind him. I'm not sure that's a compliment. It is. Trust me. I left her office and stood on the Midtown sidewalk, trying to process everything. The statement I'd signed, the story that would break tomorrow, the fight with Damien that still felt raw and unfinished. My phone buzzed. Damien, Melissa said you signed the statement. Thank you. I stared at the message. Typed and deleted 5 responses. Finally settled on, I didn't do it for you. I did it because Victoria doesn't get to control my narrative. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Fair enough. Can we talk? Please? I looked at the time. 2:47 p.m. Tomorrow the story would break. Tomorrow our marriage would be dissected by tabloids and social media, and everyone with an opinion about wealthy men and the women they married. Tomorrow we'd face the consequences of our father's mistakes. But today I could choose whether to face it alone or together. Cross Tower. 1 hour, I sent. I'll be waiting. Damien. She arrived at exactly 3:47 p.m., still wearing last night's dress, her hair pulled back, her expression guarded. I met her at the elevator, and we stood there for a moment. 2 people who'd been intimate 12 hours ago now separated by anger and fear and the weight of tomorrow's headlines. Thank you for coming, I said. Don't thank me yet. She walked past me into the penthouse. We need to talk. Really talk. No more controlling bullshit. No more unilateral decisions. If we're going to survive this, we do it as partners. Agreed? She turned, surprised. Just like that. Just like that. I gestured to the couch. Sit, please. We sat on opposite ends, close enough to talk, far enough to maintain distance. I poured 2 glasses of water, handed her one. I'm sorry, I said, about this morning. You were right. I should have asked you about Victoria's blackmail before deciding. Should have treated you like a partner instead of a problem to solve. Why didn't you? Because asking means admitting I don't have all the answers. And I've spent 20 years being the person with all the answers. I looked at her. Because letting you in means being vulnerable. And vulnerability is terrifying. Elena was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm terrified too. Of you. Of this marriage. Of losing myself in your world. But I signed that statement because I meant what I said last night. I'm choosing this. Choosing us. Even when it's hard. Why? Because I see who you are beneath the armor. And that person, the one who plays Chopin and funds my father's company and admits he doesn't know how to be human, that person is worth fighting for. She moved closer. But I need you to fight too, Damien. Fight against your instinct to control everything. Fight to be the partner you promised you'd try to be. I reached for her hand. She let me take it. I don't know if I can be what you need. Neither do I. But we won't know unless we try. She squeezed my hand. Tell me about Victoria. The real story. So I did. Told her about the 2-year relationship that had been more transaction than romance. About realizing Victoria loved the Cross name more than the man carrying it. About ending the engagement and paying her off. Thinking it was finished. She's not wrong that I'm controlling, I said, or that I turn everything into a transaction. But I didn't coerce you, Elena. I gave you a choice, a shitty choice, but a choice. I know. She was quiet for a moment. When the story breaks tomorrow, it's going to be ugly. People will judge us. Judge me for staying. Judge you for enforcing the contract. Are you ready for that? Are you? No. But I'm here anyway. She moved closer until our knees touched. What happens after? After the story runs, After the media frenzy dies down, what are we then? I thought about my answer carefully, because this was the moment, the choice between maintaining the walls or letting her in completely. We're two people trying to build something real from a foundation of contract and debt. I said finally, we're a marriage that started as revenge but became something else. We're uncertain and terrified and possibly doomed. I cupped her face, my thumb tracing her cheekbone. But we're choosing each other anyway. She kissed me. Soft, tentative, a question more than a statement. I kissed her back, pulling her closer until she was in my lap, her arms around my neck, her body warm against mine. When we broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. I'm still angry at you. I know. And I'm not moving into the penthouse permanently until you prove you can treat me like an equal. Fair, but I'll stay tonight, because tomorrow's going to be hell, and I don't want to face it alone. I held her tighter. Neither do I. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking, really talking, the way we should have from the beginning, about our fathers, about the weight of inherited mistakes, about the fear of becoming the people who'd hurt us, about what we wanted this marriage to be, if we could strip away the contract and the coercion and start fresh. It wasn't resolution, but it was a start. At 7 p.m., my phone buzzed. Carolyn, page 6 moved up the story. It's going live in 10 minutes. I showed Elena the message. She went pale but nodded. Okay, let's see what Victoria's got. We pulled up page 6 on my laptop. Waited. At 7:09 p.m., the story appeared. Billionaire's contract bride, inside Damien Cross's coercive marriage. The headline was exactly as ugly as expected. But as I read the article, I realized something. Melissa had done her job. The story included Victoria's claims, yes, but it also included Elena's statement. My attorney's evidence of the CFO's embezzlement. Quotes from Morgan Tech employees saying the company had been secretly funded for months. It wasn't a puff piece, but it wasn't character assassination either. It was complicated, messy, human, like us. Well, Elena said, scrolling through the comments already appearing, we're officially a tabloid sensation. How do you feel about that? Ask me tomorrow. She closed the laptop. Right now, I just want to forget the world exists for a few hours. I pulled her close, buried my face in her hair. I can arrange that. We made love again that night, slower than before, with the weight of tomorrow pressing down on us. Afterward, she fell asleep in my arms, her breathing deep and even, while I lay awake watching Manhattan's lights flicker in the dark. Tomorrow would bring consequences. Media scrutiny, investor questions, the board demanding explanations. Victoria would retaliate. The story would spread. But tonight, Elena had chosen to stay, had chosen to face it with me rather than alone. That had to mean something. At 2:47 a.m., I slipped out of bed and went to piano, played Chopin, letting the notes fill the silence, letting them say what I couldn't. I heard her footsteps behind me, felt her arms wrap around my waist, her cheek pressed against my back. Play something happy, she whispered. I don't know anything happy. Then play something hopeful. I thought for a moment, then started Debussy, Clair de Lune, gentle, searching, the musical equivalent of Moonlight on Water. Elena listened, her arms never leaving me. When I finished, she kissed the back of my neck. We're going to be okay, she said. I don't know how, but we will. I wanted to believe her. Wanted to believe that two broken people could build something whole from the wreckage of their father's war. But as I sat at the piano with Elena's arms around me and tomorrow's storm gathering on the horizon, all I could think was, I hope you're right. Because I'd spent 20 years building walls to keep the world out. And in 1 week, Elena Morgan had walked through every single one. That made her either my salvation or my destruction. Tomorrow we'd find out which. Chapter 7. The Trap. Elena. The storm broke at 6:23 a.m. I woke to the sound of Damien's phone buzzing. Not the polite vibration of a text, but the insistent ring of a call that wouldn't be ignored. He was already awake beside me, staring at the ceiling with the kind of tension that suggested he'd been awake for hours. Don't answer it, I said. I have to. He reached for the phone, checked the screen. It's the board chair. I watched him take the call, watched his expression shift from guarded to grim as he listened. His free hand found mine under the sheets. Squeeze once. A lifeline or a warning, I couldn't tell which. I understand, he said finally. Emergency meeting at 9. I'll be there. He ended the call and sat up, running a hand through his hair. In the early morning light, he looked exhausted, vulnerable, human. How bad? I asked. They want explanations. The contract, the marriage, Victoria's allegations. He turned to face me. 3 board members are calling for my resignation. They think the scandal makes me a liability. The words hit like stones. Can they force you out? If they have enough votes, yes. He stood, started pulling on clothes. I built Cross Ventures from nothing, spent 20 years turning it into what it is today, and they're ready to throw me away over a tabloid story. I got out of bed, wrapped myself in his shirt. What do you need from me? He paused, surprised. You'd help me? After everything, we're in this together, remember? Partners. I crossed him, took his hands. Tell me what you need. For a moment, he just looked at me. Then he pulled me close, buried his face in my hair. I need you to be okay. Whatever happens today, if I lose a company, if the board votes me out, I need to know you'll be okay. Damien, the prenup has a clause. If I'm removed from Cross Ventures, you get a lump sum, $5 million, plus Morgan Tech stays operational. You'd be free. His arms tightened around me. You could leave. Start over. Forget this ever happened. I pulled back to look at him. Is that what you want? I want you to have a choice. A real one this time. I had a choice last night. I chose to stay. I touched his face, felt the stubble rough against my palm. I'm not leaving because things got hard. That's not who I am. You're stronger than I deserve. Maybe, but you're stuck with me anyway. I kissed him, brief, grounding. Go to your meeting. Fight for what you built. I'll be here when you get back. He left at 7:30 a.m., and I was alone in the penthouse with my thoughts and the city waking up below. I made coffee, stood at the windows watching Manhattan come to life, and tried not to think about what would happen if the board voted him out. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. We should talk. Victoria. I stared at the message. Every instinct screamed to delete it. Block the number. Pretend Victoria Chin didn't exist. But she'd already proven she could cause damage from a distance. Maybe it was time to face her directly. Where? I typed back. Café Lalo, Upper West Side, 10 a.m. I knew the place. A French cafe, very public. The kind of spot where confrontations had to stay civilized. Smart choice on her part. I'll be there. Café Lalo was half full when I arrived at 9:52 a.m. Tourists and locals, the smell of coffee and fresh pastries, sunlight streaming through tall windows. Victoria sat at a corner table, perfectly composed in a cream sweater and designer jeans, looking like she'd stepped out of a lifestyle magazine. Elena, she gestured to the empty chair. Thank you for coming. I sat, keeping my expression neutral. What do you want? To apologize. She said it simply, without preamble. For the photo I showed you at the gala. For the page 6 story. For trying to manipulate you into hating Damien. I studied her face, searching for the angle. Why? Because I read your statement, the one you gave Melissa. Victoria stirred her coffee, not meeting my eyes. You defended him. After everything, the contract, the coercion, the impossible position he put you in, you still defended him. And I realized something. What? That you love him. She looked up. Or you're falling in love with him. Either way, you're in deeper than I ever was. The word should have felt like an accusation. Instead, they felt like recognition. I don't. Don't lie. Not to me, not to yourself. Victoria leaned forward. I spent 2 years with Damien Cross. 2 years trying to crack that armor, try to make him see me as more than a convenient arrangement. And he never did. Never looked at me the way he looks at you. How does he look at me? Like you're real. Like you matter. She smiled, sad and knowing, like you're the first person in 20 years who's made him feel something other than empty. I didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know if it was true or just Victoria's perception, filtered through her own hurt. Why are you telling me this? I asked finally. Because I want you to understand what you're up against. Victoria pulled out her phone. Show me a photo. This is Damien at 23, right after his father died. The photo showed a younger Damien, gone hollow-eyed, standing in front of a building I didn't recognize. He looked broken, lost, nothing like the controlled, powerful man I knew. He was alone, Victoria said. No family, no money, nothing but debt and his father's ruined reputation. And he rebuilt everything from that. Turned himself into a machine because machines don't feel pain. She swiped to another photo. Damien at 30, in a tuxedo at some gala, surrounded by people but looking utterly isolated. I thought I could fix him, Victoria continued. Thought if I was patient enough, loving enough, he'd let me in. But you can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed, who's built their entire identity around not needing anyone. Then why did you try to destroy him? Because if I couldn't have him, I wanted him to hurt the way he'd hurt me. She set down her phone. Petty, I know, but that's what heartbreak does. Turns you petty and cruel and willing to burn everything down just to feel something other than rejected. I looked at the photos again. Tried to reconcile the broken 23-year-old with a man who'd blackmailed me into marriage. What changed your mind? Your statement. The way you described the contract. Not as coercion, but as an impossible choice you made to save something you loved. Victoria's eyes were wet. That's the difference between us. I love Damien. You love what he's trying to protect. I don't love him. Not yet, but you will. She pulled out an envelope, slid it across the table. This is everything I have on the CFO. Bank records, emails, evidence he's been embezzling for 18 months. Give it to Melissa. It'll help Damien with the board. I took the envelope, suspicious. Why are you helping him? Because I'm done being the villain in his story. Victoria stood, gathered her purse. And because you deserve to know what you're fighting for. Damien Cross is a lot of things. Controlling, ruthless, emotionally unavailable. But he's also loyal, brilliant, and capable of change. If anyone can crack that armor, it's you. She left before I could respond. I sat in the cafe for a long time, the envelope heavy in my hands, Victoria's words echoing in my head. You love what he's trying to protect. Was that true? Did I love Morgan tech enough to stay in a marriage that had started as coercion? Or was it something else? Some part of me that recognized Damien's loneliness because it matched my own? My phone buzzed. Damien, meeting's over. Can you come to the office? On my way. Cross Tower felt different in daylight. Less imposing, more exposed. I rode the elevator to the penthouse level, clutching Victoria's envelope, trying to prepare for whatever news Damien had. He was standing at his office window when I arrived, still in his suit from the meeting, his shoulders tight with tension. He turned when he heard me enter. They voted, he said without preamble. 5-3. I'm out. The words hung in the air, impossible and final. Damien. Effective immediately. I have until Friday to clear out my office. His voice was flat, controlled, but I heard the devastation underneath. 20 years. Gone. I crossed to him, wrapped my arms around his waist from behind. Felt him shudder once, violently, before the controls slammed back into place. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be. This is what I deserve. He turned in my arms, and his eyes were bleak. I built an empire on revenge and contracts and control. Of course, it collapsed the moment someone questioned the foundation. It's not over. We can fight this. With what? The board made their decision. The shareholders will support it. Cross Ventures will continue without me. He touched my face. But you're free now. The prenup clause activates. $5 million. Morgan Tech stays operational. You can leave. Stop saying that. It's true. I don't care if it's true. I grabbed his lapels, forced him to look at me. I'm not leaving because you lost your company. I'm not leaving because things got hard. I'm staying because I choose to. Because we're partners. Because I stopped. The words were there, on the edge of my tongue, terrifying and true, because I'm falling in love with you. But saying them felt like stepping off a cliff. So instead, I kissed him, hard, desperate, try and convey what I couldn't say. He responded immediately, his hands tangling in my hair, his body pressing me against the desk. The kiss was hungry, almost violent, like he was trying to consume me or be consumed. We broke apart, both breathing hard. I have something for you, I said, pulling out Victoria's envelope. Evidence against the CFO. Bank records, emails. Victoria gave it to me this morning. Damien stared at the envelope. Victoria gave you this? She apologized, said she was done being the villain. I pressed it into his hands. Give it to Melissa. Maybe it'll help. He opened the envelope, scanned the contents. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite hope, but close. This is enough to prove the CFO was feeding Victoria false information, that he manipulated the numbers to make Cross Ventures look unstable. Can you use it? Maybe, if I can prove the board voted based on fraudulent data. He looked at me. Why would Victoria help me? Because she saw something in us, something worth protecting. I took his hands. Damien, we can fight this. But only if you let me in. Really let me in. No more walls, no more control. We do this together or not at all. For a long moment, he just looked at me. Then he pulled me close, buried his face in my neck. I don't know how to do this, he whispered. How to be the man you deserve. How to let you in without losing myself. Then we figure out together. I held him tighter. That's what partners do. We stood like that for a long time. Two people clinging to each other while the world shifted beneath our feet. Outside, Manhattan continued its relentless motion. Indifferent to our crisis, our marriage, our desperate attempt to build something real from the wreckage. Finally, Damien pulled back. I need to call Melissa. See if this evidence is enough to challenge the board's vote. Do it. I'll be here. He made the call while I stood at the window, watching the city below. Heard him explain the situation, heard Melissa's sharp questions, heard the first hint of possibility enter his voice. When he hung up, his expression was cautiously optimistic. She thinks we have a case. The CFO violated his fiduciary duty. If we can prove the board voted based on his manipulated data, we can challenge the removal. How long will it take? Days. Maybe weeks. He crossed to me, took my hands. Elena, if we do this, if we fight the board, it's going to get worse before it gets better. More media attention, more scrutiny. They'll dig into everything. Your past, your father, our marriage. I know. And you're still willing to stay? I thought about Victoria's words. You love what he's trying to protect. Thought about Damien at 23, broken and alone, rebuilding himself brick by brick. Thought about the man who played Chopin at 3 a.m. and admitted he didn't know how to be human. I'm still willing, I said. He kissed me, soft, reverent, like I was something precious. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still have to win. The next 72 hours were a blur of lawyers and conference calls and media statements. Melissa filed an emergency injunction challenging the board's vote. The CFO was suspended pending investigation. Cross Ventures stock price fluctuated wildly as investors tried to parse what was happening. And through it all, Damien and I stayed together. Not in the penthouse. We'd moved to my Williamsburg apartment, needing the distance from Cross Tower, from the life that was imploding. We slept in my cheap bed, made coffee in my tiny kitchen, and planned our strategy at my second-hand table. It was the most time we'd spent together since the wedding. No performances, no galas, no pretending for cameras. Just two people learning how to be married when everything else was falling apart. On Thursday morning, I woke to find Damien at my window, watching the sunrise over Brooklyn. He'd barely slept. I could see in the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. Come back to bed, I said. Can't sleep? I got up, wrapped myself in a blanket, joined him at the window. Talk to me? I keep thinking about my father, about how he felt when Morgan stole the algorithm, the betrayal, the helplessness. He was quiet for a moment. I spent 20 years making sure I'd never feel that way again. Built walls, maintained control, turned everything into a transaction. And now you're losing control anyway. Yes. He turned to face me. And the terrifying part is, I don't hate it. Being here with you, in this tiny apartment, with no plan and no guarantees. I should be panicking. But I'm not. What are you feeling? Uncertain. Vulnerable. He touched my face. Alive. For the first time in 20 years. I feel alive. I kissed him. Not because the contract required it. Not because we were performing, but because I wanted to. Because somewhere between the blackmail and the fight and the crisis, Damien Cross had become someone I couldn't imagine my life without. I love you, I said. The words came out before I could stop them. Hung in the air between us. Terrifying and true. Damien went very still. Elena, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. I took his hands. I love you. Not the machine you built. Not the armor you wear. The person underneath. The one who's uncertain and vulnerable and trying so hard to be better than his father's mistakes. He pulled me close, held me so tight it almost hurt. I don't know if I can love you the way you deserve. Don't know if I'm capable of it. That's okay. We'll figure out together. You keep saying that. Together, like it's simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. I pulled back to look at him. We choose each other. Every day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. He kissed me then, deep, searching, like he was trying to memorize the taste of me. We made love on my cheap couch as the sun rose over Brooklyn. And for those moments, nothing else mattered. Not the board vote. Not the media circus. Not the uncertain future. Just us. Afterward, as we lay tangled together in the early morning light, Damien's phone rang. Melissa, he answered on speaker. Tell me you have good news. Better than good, the CFO confessed. Full cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. He's giving us everything. The embezzlement, the false data, Victoria's involvement. Melissa's voice was triumphant. The board's calling an emergency meeting tomorrow. They're going to reinstate you. Damien sat up, pulling me with him. You're sure? Positive. The evidence is overwhelming. They don't have a choice. She paused. Damien, you won. Cross Ventures is yours again. He ended the call and turned to me, his expression stunned. We did it. You did it. No. He cupped my face. We did it. Together. You stayed when you could have left. You fought when you could have run. You, his voice cracked. You chose me. I'll keep choosing you. As long as you keep choosing me. Always, he said. I choose you always. We spend the rest of the day in my apartment, ignoring the outside world, just being together. No contracts, no obligations, no performances. Just Elena and Damien. Two people who'd started as enemies and become something neither of us had words for yet. That evening, as we made dinner in my tiny kitchen, pasta and cheap wine, nothing like the meals we'd had at the plaza. My phone buzzed. Text from Daniel Yates. Saw the news. Congratulations. Your father will be proud. I showed it to Damien. He read it, then pulled me close. Do you think he would be? I asked. Proud of me for marrying you? For staying. I think he'd be proud that you saved his company, that you fought for what mattered. Damien was quiet for a moment. My father would have hated this. Hated that I married Thomas Morgan's daughter. But I think he'd understand why. Why? Because you're the first thing I've chosen for myself in 20 years. Not for revenge, not for the company, not for control. Just because I wanted you. He kissed my forehead. That's worth something. We ate dinner on my couch, watching a movie neither of us paid attention to, just existing in each other's space. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt something like peace. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Victoria. Congratulations on the board vote. Take care of him. Elena, he needs you more than he knows. I showed Damien the message. He smiled. A real smile, not the controlled expression he used for cameras. She's right, he said. I do need you. I need you too. Even though I blackmailed you into marriage? Even though I kissed him. We're past that now. We're building something new. What are we building? I thought about the contract that had brought us together and the choice that had kept us together, about the walls that had crumbled and the trust that had grown in their place. A partnership, I said finally, a real one, where we're equals, where we choose each other every day. I like that. He pulled me closer. Mrs. Cross. I like that too, Mr. Cross. We fell asleep on my couch, tangled together, the TV still playing in the background. And when I woke at 2 a.m. to find Damien watching me with an expression I'd never seen before, soft, unguarded, almost tender, I knew something had shifted. Can't sleep? I asked. Don't want to. Want to stay awake and memorize this. He touched my face. You, here, choosing me. It feels like a dream. It's real. I know. That's what makes it terrifying. He was quiet for a moment. Elena, I need to tell you something. Okay, I'm falling in love with you. I don't know how to do it. Don't know if I'm doing it right. But when I look at you, I feel something I haven't felt since before my father died. Something that feels like hope. The words crack something open in my chest. That's love, Damien. That's exactly what it feels like. Then I'm in trouble. Because I don't know how to love someone without trying to control them. Then we learned together. I kissed him. That's what partners do. We made love again, slower this time, with a tenderness that felt new. And afterward, as we lay in my cheap bed with Brooklyn sounds filtering through the walls, I realized something. We'd survived the storm. The contract, the coercion, the media circus, the board vote, all of it. We'd survived because we'd chosen each other when we didn't have to. That had to count for something. Damien? I whispered into the dark. Yes. Tomorrow, when you go back to Cross Ventures, when you're reinstated, things will change. You'll be busy again, important again. You'll have 100 people demanding your attention. I know. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll remember this. Us, here, in this tiny apartment. Remember that you don't need the company or the money or the power to be worth loving. You just need to be you. He pulled me closer, his heart beating steady beneath my ear. I promise. As long as you promise to remind me when I forget. Deal. We fell asleep like that. Two people who'd been strangers 3 weeks ago, now bound by something stronger than any contract. Something that looked like love, felt like hope, and terrified us both. But we were choosing it anyway. Together. Chapter 8. The Choice. Damien. Friday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. I stood in my penthouse at 5:47 a.m., back in Cross Tower for the first time since the board vote, since everything had collapsed and rebuilt itself in the span of a week, and felt the ghost of my old life pressing against the windows. Elena was still asleep in my bed. My bed, not the guest wing. That detail felt significant somehow, like we crossed a threshold that couldn't be uncrossed. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. Melissa had called it a formality. The evidence against the CFO was overwhelming. The vote to reinstate me practically guaranteed. But standing here in the pre-dawn quiet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to break. My phone buzzed. Text from Carolyn. Media's already gathering downstairs. 20 reporters, maybe more. They want a statement. Of course they did. The story had everything. Corporate intrigue, a marriage contract, betrayal, and redemption. We'd given them a narrative they could sell. I typed back, no statement until after the meeting. 3 dots appeared. Then understood. Good luck today. I pocketed the phone and walked to the piano. Hadn't played since the night Elena had asked for something hopeful, since I'd chosen Debussy and felt her arms around me. The keys were cold under my fingers as I pressed down middle C, pure and accusatory. You're awake early. I turned. Elena stood in the doorway, wearing one of my shirts, her hair mussed from sleep, looking more beautiful than anyone had a right to look at 6 in the morning. Couldn't sleep, I said. Nervous? Uncertain? I gestured for her to join me. She crossed the room, sat beside me on the piano bench. The board's going to reinstate me. Melissa's confident. The evidence is solid. But after, everything changes again. Yes. I took her hand, studied the black sapphire ring that had become as familiar as my own heartbeat. I'll be back to 18-hour days, constant travel, board meetings, and investor calls. The machine starts up again. And you're afraid you'll become the machine. It wasn't a question. She knew me too well already. I spent 20 years building Cross Ventures into what it is. That required sacrifice, relationships, sleep, anything that wasn't focused on the goal. I became good at it. Efficient. I looked at her. But efficiency doesn't leave room for a wife who needs me to be human. Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she played a single note, D just above middle C. My father used to say that companies are like children. You pour everything into them, shape them, watch them grow. But eventually they have to stand on their own. Otherwise, you're not building something sustainable. You're building a monument to your own control issues. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Your father was smarter than I gave him credit for. He had his moments. She played another note, then another, building a simple melody. What if Cross Ventures could run without you being there every minute? What if you hired people you trusted, delegated authority, built systems instead of dependencies? That's not how I operate. Maybe it should be. She stopped playing, turned to face me. Damien, I'm not asking you to give up your company. I'm asking you to give up the belief that you have to control everything to be worthy, that you have to sacrifice your humanity to be successful. What if I don't know how to do both? Then we figure it out. Together. She took my hands. But I need you to promise me something. When you walk into that boardroom today, when they reinstate you and hand back the keys to your empire, promise me you'll remember that you're more than Cross Ventures, that your worth isn't measured in quarterly earnings or stock prices. What is it measured in? In moments like this, in choosing to be present instead of perfect, in letting people, and even when it's terrifying. She squeezed my hands. In being loved not for what you built, but for who you are underneath. I pulled her close, buried my face in her hair. She smelled like my shampoo and something uniquely her, vanilla and determination. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. We sat like that until the sun rose. Two people clinging to each other before the world demanded we perform our roles again. Then Elena kissed me and went to get dressed, and I was alone with the piano and the choice I had to make. Control or connection. The machine or the man. 20 years ago, I'd chosen control. Built walls so high nothing could hurt me. And I'd been miserable, even if I'd been too numb to recognize it. Now I had a choice to make it different. At 7:30 a.m., I called Carolyn, set up meetings with the executive team for next week. I want to discuss delegation protocols and succession planning. Silence on the other end. Then, succession planning? Damien, you're 36. And I've been running this company like I'm the only person capable of making decisions. That changes now. I looked at Elena, who'd emerged from the bedroom in a navy dress that made her look professional and formidable. I'm building something sustainable, not a monument to my control issues. Okay, I'll set it up. Carolyn paused. This is about Elena, isn't it? This is about remembering I'm human. I ended the call. Elena crossed to me, adjusted my tie with the casual intimacy of someone who'd earned the right to touch me. Ready, she asked. No, but I'm doing it anyway. The boardroom on Cross Tower's 72nd floor was designed to intimidate. Long table of polished wood, leather chairs that cost more than most people's cars, windows overlooking Manhattan like we owned it. 8 board members sat waiting, their expressions ranging from apologetic to hostile. Richard Ashford, the board chair, stood as I entered. Damien, thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? Always. He gestured ahead of the table. My seat, the one I'd occupied for 15 years. Shall we begin? I sat. Elena took the chair beside me, her presence grounding me. Melissa sat on my other side, a folder of evidence in front of her. Richard cleared his throat. Given recent developments, Specifically, evidence that our CFO provided fraudulent data and manipulated financial projections. This board moves to rescind the vote of November 10th and reinstate Damien Cross as CEO of Cross Ventures, effective immediately. All in favor? 8 hands went up, even the hostile ones. Motion carries. Richard looked at me. Damien, on behalf of the board, I apologize. We should have investigated more thoroughly before voting. We let outside pressure and media speculation cloud our judgment. Noted, I kept my voice level. But before I accept reinstatement, I have conditions. The room went silent. Elena's hand found mine under the table. Conditions? Richard frowned. Damien, this is a formality. I want operational changes, starting with hiring a COO to handle day-to-day management. Someone I trust to make decisions without my constant oversight. You've always resisted delegating authority. I was wrong. The admission felt strange in my mouth. I built Cross Ventures on control and fear. That worked when I was alone, but I'm not alone anymore. I glanced at Elena. I have a wife. I want a life outside this building that requires trusting other people to do their jobs. Richard exchanged glances with the other board members. This is unexpected, but not unwelcome. Who did you have in mind for COO? Melissa Grant. Melissa's head snapped toward me. Damien, you've been my attorney for 8 years. You know this company as well as I do. You're brilliant, ruthless when necessary, and you'll tell me when I'm being an idiot. I looked at her. I trust you. That's not something I say often. I'm an attorney, not an operations executive. Then learn. I did. I turned back to the board. Those are my terms. Melissa as COO, with full authority to make operational decisions. I remain CEO but focus on strategy, major deals, board relations. We build systems, not dependencies. Richard was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. Motion to approve Melissa Grant as Chief Operating Officer Cross Ventures. Contingent on her acceptance. All in favor. 8 hands. Unanimous. Melissa? Richard looked at her. What do you say? She looked at me, something like respect in her expression. I say you're finally learned to let go. She extended her hand. I accept. We shook on it. The board moved on to other business. The CFO's termination, legal action against Victoria for corporate espionage, damage control for the media circus. I participated, answered questions, but part of me was already gone, already thinking about Elena and the life we were building outside these walls. The meeting ended at 11:47 a.m. As board members filed out, Richard pulled me aside. That was brave, he said quietly. Admitting you need help. Choosing your marriage over total control. It didn't feel brave. It felt necessary. The best changes usually do. He glanced at Elena, who was talking with Melissa near the windows. She's good for you. Makes you human again. She terrifies me. Also good. Richard clapped my shoulder. Welcome back, Damien. Try not to get fired again. After he left, Elena crossed to me. How do you feel? Strange. Like I just gave away something I spent 20 years building. You didn't give it away. You shared it. She took my hands. That's what partnership looks like. Melissa joined us, her expression amused. Cool. You really know how to drop a bomb, Cross. You'll be good at it. I'd better be, since you just made me responsible for an $8 billion company. She looked between us. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Both of you. After Melissa left, Elena and I stood alone in the boardroom. Manhattan spread below us like a promise. What now? She asked. Now we figure out how to be married when we're not in crisis mode. I pulled her close. No media circus, no board drama, no external pressure. Just us figuring out how to build a life together. That sounds terrifying. It is. I kissed her forehead, but we're doing it anyway. Elena, we left Cross Tower through the service entrance, avoiding the reporters still camped in the lobby. Damien's hand never left mine as we navigated through back hallways and loading docks. 2 people escaping the spotlight to find something quieter. Where are we going? I asked as we climbed into a car. Brooklyn Heights. I want to show you something. The drive took 20 minutes. We pulled up to a brownstone on a tree-lined street. The kind of place that looked like it belonged in a movie about what life should be. Elegant but lived in, with window boxes and a front stoop where you could imagine drinking coffee on Sunday mornings. What is this? I asked. A house. Damien got out, helped me from the car. I bought it 3 years ago. Thought I might live here someday, but I never moved in. It's been sitting empty. He unlocked the door. Inside was beautiful, hardwood floors, exposed brick, tall windows letting in afternoon light, furniture covered in sheets, dust motes dancing in the sun, a piano in the corner, a kitchen with marble counters, a fireplace that looked original. It's perfect, I said. It's ours, if you want it. Damien pulled the sheet off the piano, revealing the same make as the one in his penthouse. I thought maybe we could live here, keep the penthouse for work, but have this as home. Something that's ours, not cross ventures. I walked through the rooms, imagining our life here. Morning coffee in the kitchen, books on the shelves, his piano music filling the space. A life that wasn't performed for cameras or measured in quarterly earnings. Why are you showing me this now? I asked, because I want you to know I'm serious. About choosing you, about building a life that's more than the company. He followed me into what would be the bedroom. Large, with windows overlooking a small garden. About being the man you deserve instead of the machine I became. I turned to face him. I don't need a house to know you're serious. I know, but I wanted to give you something that wasn't in a contract. Something I chose not because I had to, but because I wanted to. He crossed to me, took my hands. Elena Morgan Cross, will you live here with me? Build a home that's ours, not his or mine, but ours. The question should have felt small after everything we'd been through. Instead, it felt monumental. A choice made freely, without coercion or contracts or impossible deadlines. Yes, I said, I'll live here with you. He kissed me then, soft and reverent, like I was something precious he'd almost lost. We made love on the dusty floor of our future bedroom, afternoon light painting us in gold, and it felt like a beginning instead of continuation. Afterward, we lay tangled together on the hardwood, both laughing at the absurdity of it. We have a perfectly good bed at the penthouse, I said. I know, but this felt right, christening the space. With dust and splinters? With us. He pulled me closer. Elena, I need to tell you something. Okay. I love you. The words came out steady. Certain? I'm still learning how. Still figuring out what it means. But I love you. Not because the contract says I have to. Not because you're convenient or useful. I love you because you see me, really see me, and you chose to stay anyway. Tears pricked my eyes. I love you too. Have for a while now. I know. You said it first. Brave woman. He touched my face. I'm sorry it took me so long to say it back. You were worth waiting for. We stayed there until the sun started to set, talking about paint colors and furniture and whether we wanted a dog. Normal things. Married things. The kind of conversation people had when they were building a life instead of surviving a crisis. Finally, we got dressed and walked to Brownstone one more time, making plans. We should host dinners here. I said, invite your employees, my father's old team. Build community. I'd like that. Damien pulled me close as we stood in the living room. What else? A library. You have all those books at the penthouse. Let's give them a proper home. Done. What else? I thought about it, about the life we were building, the choice we were making every day to be partners instead of adversaries. Happiness. Let's build happiness here. That's not a room. It's better than a room. It's a goal. I kissed him. We've spent so long surviving. Your father's death, my father's mistakes, the contract, the media circus. Let's try something different. Let's try being happy. Damien was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, a real smile, unguarded and genuine. Okay, let's try being happy. We spent the weekend moving my things from Williamsburg. combining his furniture with mine, turning the brownstone into something that belonged to both of us. It was chaotic and exhausting and perfect. Sunday evening, we collapsed on the new couch, a compromise between his expensive taste and my practical budget, and ordered pizza. Damien's phone buzzed constantly with work emails, but he ignored them. "Melissa can handle it," he said when I raised an eyebrow. "You're really doing this. Delegating." "I'm trying." He pulled me against his chest. "It's harder than I expected. Every time my phone buzzes, I want to respond immediately, fix the problem, maintain control. But you're not. But I'm not." He kissed the top of my head. "Because you're right. I built Cross Ventures to prove I was worthy. But I don't need to prove that anymore. I have you. That's enough." My phone buzzed. Text from Daniel Yates. "Saw the news about the reinstatement. Congratulations. Also, the trust is finalized. Morgan Tech's employees are protected." I showed Damien the message. He read it, then looked at me with something like hurt in his expression. "You set up a trust? To protect the company from me?" "I set it up to protect the company from uncertainty. If something happened to me, I want to make sure your revenge didn't extend to people who'd done nothing wrong." I took his hand. "It wasn't about not trusting you. It was about protecting what my father built." He was quiet for a moment. Then, smart, ruthless, even, "I'm impressed. I learn from the best." "That's terrifying." But he was smiling. "What else are you plotting that I don't know about?" "Wouldn't you like to know?" We spent the rest of the evening like that. Teasing, talking, existing in each other's space without agenda or performance. And when we finally went to bed in our new bedroom, Damien pulled me close and whispered, "Thank you." "For what?" "For choosing me. For staying. For teaching me that control isn't the same as safety." He was quiet for a moment. "For loving me even when I didn't know how to love you back." "You're learning. That's all I ask." "I'll keep learning. Every day. I promise." We fell asleep like that. Two people who'd started as enemies, become reluctant partners, and somehow found love in the wreckage of their father's war. Monday morning, I woke to find Damien's side of the bed empty. Panic flared, old habits, old fears, until I heard piano music drifting up from downstairs. I followed the sound, found him at the piano in the living room, playing something I didn't recognize, beautiful and complex, his fingers moving across the keys with practiced ease. He looked up when I entered. "Morning. You're playing something new." "Ravel, Pavane for a Dead Princess." He gestured for me to join him. My mother's second favorite after the Chopin. I sat beside him on the bench. "Why this piece?" "Because it's about mourning and memory, but also about moving forward, about honoring what's gone while building what's next." He took my hand. Felt appropriate. "For your father?" "For both of them. My father, yours. The men we were shaped by, for better and worse." He played a few more measures. "I spent 20 years trying to prove my father's death meant something, that I could rebuild what was taken from him. But maybe the best way to honor him is to live differently, to choose connection over control." I leaned my head on his shoulder. "He'd be proud of you. Maybe, or maybe he'd think I was soft." Damien smiled. "Either way, I'm done living for ghosts." We sat there as morning light filled the room, and I thought about how far we'd come. From that first meeting in his office, him cold and controlled, me desperate and trapped, to this moment. Two people choosing each other, building something new from the ashes of old wounds. My phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. "Saw the photos of the brownstone. It suits you both. Be happy, Elena. You earned it." I showed Damien. He read it, then set the phone aside. "She's right," he said. "We did earn this. Through coercion and blackmail and a medieval contract. Through choosing each other when we didn't have to. Through fighting for this marriage when it would have been easier to walk away." He cupped my face. "Through learning that love isn't about control or contracts. It's about showing up even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." I corrected. "Especially then." He kissed me, and I tasted coffee and promise, and the future we were building together. When we broke apart, He rested his forehead against mine. I have to go to the office today, he said. First day back officially. Meetings with Melissa, the executive team, damage control with investors. I know. Come with me? I pulled back, surprised. To Cross Ventures? To my office. Sit in on the meetings. See how the company runs. You have a seat on Morgan Tech's board. You should understand the business side. He paused. And I want you there. Want people to see that we're partners, not just husband and wife. You're sure? I'm sure. He stood. Pulled me up with him. Besides, you negotiated a hell of a counterproposal. Might as well put those skills to use. We got ready together. Him in a suit, me in a dress that said professional without trying too hard. In the car on the way to Manhattan, Damien took my hand. Nervous, he asked. A little. Your employees are going to wonder who I am, what I'm doing there. You're my wife, my partner. That's all they need to know. He squeezed my hand. Elena, I meant what I said, about building something different. That includes being transparent about us. No more hiding. No more pretending the marriage is just for show. What if people judge us? Judge me for staying with the man who enforced that contract. Then they judge us. We know the truth, that we chose each other. That's what matters. We arrived at Cross Tower at 8:47 a.m. The lobby was busy with morning traffic. Employees heading to offices, coffee in hand. The normal rhythm of a workday. Some stared as we walked past. Some whispered. But Damien kept his hand on the small of my back, steady and grounding. In the elevator, he turned to me. Ready? No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's my girl. The doors opened onto the executive floor. Carolyn was at her desk, and her face lit up when she saw us. Welcome back, Mr. Cross. Mrs. Cross. She handed Damien a tablet. Your schedule. First meetings in 10 minutes. Executive team, conference room B. Thank you, Carolyn. Damien glanced at me. Elena will be joining me for the day. Please add her to all meeting invites going forward. Carolyn's eyebrows rose slightly, but she nodded. Of course. We walked to Damien's office. The space I'd first entered 3 weeks ago. Terrified and desperate. It looked different now. Less intimidating. Just a room with a desk and a view. Coffee? Damien asked. Please. He poured 2 cups from a machine in the corner, handed me one. Our fingers brushed, and I felt that same electric charge in the first time we'd touched. Thank you, I said, for including me, for making this a partnership. Thank you for staying, for teaching me what partnership looks like. He checked his watch. We should head to the meeting. The conference room was full when we arrived. 8 executives, all in expensive suits, all looking curious about my presence. Melissa sat at the far end, and she nodded at me with something like approval. Damien took his seat at the head of the table. I sat beside him, trying to look confident even though my heart was racing. Everyone, you know my wife, Elena, Damien said. She'll be sitting in on meetings going forward. She has a seat on Morgan Tech's board and valuable insight into operations. Treat her input accordingly. A few exchanged glances, but no one objected. The meeting began. Discussion of quarterly projections, upcoming deals, the CFO's replacement. I listened, contributed when I had relevant experience, and watched Damien navigate the room with practiced ease. But something was different. He wasn't dominating the conversation, wasn't shutting down dissent. He asked questions, listened to answers, delegated decisions to department heads. He was learning to let go. The meeting ended at 10:30. As people filed out, Melissa lingered. Not bad for your first day as unofficial advisor, she said to me. I barely said anything. You didn't have to. Your presence says enough. That Damien trusts you, that you're part of the decision-making process. She glanced at Damien. He's different with you here. More human. That's the goal, Damien said. After Melissa left, we returned to his office. Damien pulled me close, buried his face in my neck. That was harder than I expected, he admitted. Letting other people make decisions, trusting them to handle things without my constant oversight. But you did it. Because you were there. Because I remember what you said. that my worth isn't measured in control. He pulled back to look at me. I'm going to mess this up sometimes. Revert to old patterns, try to micromanage. You need to call me on it. I will. That's what partners do. We spent the rest of the day like that, meetings and calls, with me learning the business and Damien learning to delegate. By 5 p.m., I was exhausted but exhilarated. Ready to go home? Damien asked. Home. The brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, with its piano and its garden and its promise of happiness. Yes, I said. Let's go home. That night, we made dinner together in our new kitchen, nothing fancy, just pasta and salad and wine that didn't cost more than my monthly rent used to. We ate at the table we'd picked out together, talking about the day, making plans for the week. Normal. Married. Happy. After dinner, Damien played piano while I unpacked boxes in the library. The music drifted through the house, filling the space with something that felt like peace. Around 10 p.m., my phone rang. A known number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Elena? It's Richard Ashford. I put him on speaker, so Damien could hear. Mr. Ashford, is everything okay? More than okay. I wanted to thank you, both of you, for today's meeting. Damien was different, more collaborative, more willing to trust his team. He paused. Whatever you're doing, Mrs. Cross, keep doing it. The company needs this version of him. I'm just reminding him he's human, I said. Well, keep reminding him. The board appreciates it. He hung up. Damien looked at me from the piano bench. The board appreciates you. I appreciate you too. He crossed to where I stood, pulled me close. I love you, Elena Cross, more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. I love you too, machine and all. I'm working on the machine part. I know. That's why I'm staying. We stood like that for a long time. Two people who've been forged in fire and somehow come out stronger. The contract that brought us together was just paper now, irrelevant compared to the choice we made every day to be partners, to be present, to be human together. Outside, Brooklyn settled into its evening rhythm. Inside, we were building something new, something that looked like love, felt like home, and terrified us both. But we were choosing it anyway. Together, always together. Epilogue, rewritten. Elena, 1 year later. The garden behind our Brooklyn Heights brownstone had transformed into something from a fairy tale. String lights crisscrossed overhead, casting warm pools of light across the brick patio. White chairs formed neat rows on either side a makeshift aisle lined with lanterns. November had been kind this year. Cold but clear, the kind of evening where the city felt hushed and expectant. I stood at the bedroom window, watching our guests arrive. Daniel Yates with his wife. Melissa Grant with a date I didn't recognize. Carolyn Webb, who become something like a friend over the past year. Morgan texts 3 employees, now 7, thanks to Damien's quiet funding. Even Richard Ashford, who called this morning to say he wouldn't miss it for the world. And in the front row, an empty chair with a photo on the seat. My father, young and smiling, from before the debt and the desperation. Damien had insisted on including him. You're going to be late to your own vow renewal, a voice said behind me. I turned. Victoria stood in the doorway, elegant in a burgundy dress, holding the bouquet we'd chosen together last week. She'd become an unlikely ally over the past year. Not quite a friend, but something close. Someone who understood what it meant to rebuild yourself after loving Damien Cross. I'm allowed to be fashionably late, I said. You're allowed. But Damien's been pacing for the past 20 minutes. Man's going to wear a hole in the patio. She crossed to me, adjusted the simple crown of flowers in my hair. You look beautiful. Happy. I am happy. The word still surprised me sometimes. After everything, the contract, the coercion, the media circus, I'd found something that looked like joy. Thank you for being here. I know it's complicated. Life's complicated. Doesn't mean we can't show up for each other. Victoria handed me the bouquet. White roses and eucalyptus. Simple and perfect. He loves you, you know. Really loves you. I've never seen him like this. Like what? Uncertain. Vulnerable. Human. She smiled. It looks good on him. A knock at the door. Melissa poked her head in. Ready? Damien's about combust from nerves. I took a breath. Nodded. Ready. The ceremony was small, just 30 people, the ones who mattered. No press, no performance, no contracts. Just witnesses to a choice we'd been making every day for a year. I walked down the aisle alone. No one to give me away, because I'd never belonged to anyone but myself. The faces turned toward me were warm, supportive, curious about this woman who'd somehow tamed Manhattan's most ruthless billionaire. And at the end of the aisle, standing under an arch wrapped in greenery, Damien. He wore a navy suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone in that way that made him look almost relaxed. His hair was slightly mussed from running his hands through it, a nervous habit I'd learned to recognize. And when he saw me, his composure cracked. Tears, actual tears, sliding down his face as I approached. I reached him, took his hands. You're crying. I'm aware. His voice was rough. You're beautiful. I'm overwhelmed. Let me have this. The officiant, a woman we'd found who specialized in vow renewals, smiled at us. Shall we begin? Please, Damien said, not taking his eyes off me. 1 year ago, Elena and Damien were married in a civil ceremony at City Hall. Today, they've chosen to renew those vows, not because they have to, but because they want to, because they've built something worth celebrating. She looked at us. Damien, would you like to go first? He nodded, cleared his throat, pulled a folded paper from his pocket, then put it away. I wrote something. But standing here, looking at you, all of it seems insufficient. Try anyway, I said softly. Elena Morgan Cross. He took a breath. A year ago, I blackmailed you into marrying me. Used a contract written before you were born to trap you in an arrangement you didn't want. I told myself it was about revenge, about honoring my father's memory. But the truth is, I was terrified of being alone, of admitting I'd spent 20 years building a life that meant nothing. His hands tightened on mine. You could have left. The prenup gave you an out. But you stayed, and you taught me something I'd forgotten. That being human isn't a weakness. That vulnerability isn't the same as failure. That love isn't about control or contracts or keeping people at a distance. He paused, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. You taught me that I'm more than what I've built, that my worth isn't measured in quarterly earnings or board votes, that I'm allowed to be uncertain, to make mistakes, to need someone. His voice cracked. You taught me how to be loved, and I'm so grateful you stayed long enough for me to learn. I was crying now, too, tears sliding down my face as he continued. So today I'm choosing you, not because a contract says I have to, not because it's convenient or strategic. I'm choosing you because you're the best thing that's ever happened to me, because you make me want to be better than I was, because when I wake up at 2 a.m. and the world feels impossible, you're there, reminding me I'm human, reminding me I'm loved. He pulled out a ring, new, different from the black sapphire. This one was simple platinum, engraved with words I couldn't see yet. Elena, will you continue to be my wife, my partner, my reminder that life is more than work and walls and old wounds? Yes, I whispered. Always yes. He slid the ring onto my finger, next to the black sapphire I'd never taken off. I looked at the engraving. Together, always together. The officiant turned to me. Elena, I took a breath, looked at Damien through my tears. I didn't write anything down. I was going to, but every time I tried, it felt like I was performing again, saying what people expected instead of what was true. I squeezed his hands. The truth is, I was terrified of you, of this marriage, of losing myself in your world. And for a while, I did lose myself. Became someone I didn't recognize, someone who measured worth in contracts and leverage, who forgot that love isn't a transaction. But you reminded me who I was, not through grand gestures or dramatic moments, but through small things, playing Chopin at 3 a.m, buying this house, and asking me to build a home with you, delegating at work, because I asked you to try, crying right now, in front of 30 people, because you're overwhelmed by how much you feel. I touched his face, felt the wetness of his tears. You're not perfect, Damien Cross. You're controlling and ruthless, and you still try to solve every problem yourself. But you're also kind and loyal, and you're learning to be human again. And I love you, all of you, even the parts that are still broken. I pulled out my own ring, matching platinum, same engraving. So I'm choosing you too, choosing to build a life that's ours, not defined by our fathers or their mistakes, choosing to be partners, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I slid the ring onto his finger. He looked at it, then at me, and smiled through his tears. I love you, he said. I love you too. The officiant was crying now too. By the power vested in me, and by the choice you both made today, I pronounce you still married. Enthusiastically so. She laughed. You may kiss your wife. Again. Damien pulled me close and kissed me. Not the chase brush from City Hall, not the performance from the gala. This was real, deep and searching and full of promise. His hands tangled in my hair, and I heard applause and laughter from our guests, but all faded to background noise. There was just us, choosing each other. Again, when we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. Thank you. For what? For staying. For teaching me. For loving me when I didn't know how to love you back. He pulled back to look at me. For giving me a second chance at this. At us. We gave each other a second chance. The reception was simple. Catered food, a playlist Damien and I had made together, toasts from friends who'd watched us transform from adversaries to partners. Melissa told an embarrassing story about the first time she'd seen us together, how she'd known immediately we were either going to kill each other or fall in love. Richard Ashford talked about watching Damien become human again, about the difference one person could make in a life built on walls. And Victoria raised her glass and said, to Elena and Damien, who proved that sometimes the best love stories start with the worst contracts. May you continue choosing each other every single day. We danced in the garden as the sun set, Damien's arms around me, his voice in my ear humming along to the music. Around us, our friends celebrated. Above us, the string lights twinkled like stars. And I thought about how far we'd come, from that first meeting in his office to this moment, dancing in the home we'd built together. What are you thinking? Damien asked. That I'm happy. That we made it. We did. He pulled me closer. Though I think we're still figuring it out. That's okay. We have time. Later, after the guests had left and we'd cleaned up the garden, we stood in our bedroom, the same room where we'd first made love, where we'd fought and reconciled and learned what partnership meant. Damien pulled me close, his hands gentle on my waist. I have something for you. Another ring? I'm running out of fingers. Not a ring. He reached into his nightstand, pulled out a document. This. I took it, scanned the pages. It was the original contract, the one that had started everything. But across the front, in bold red letters, void. I had my lawyers file it officially last week. Damien said, the marriage clause, the debt obligation, all of it legally dissolved. You're not bound to me by contract anymore. My throat tightened. Damien, you're bound to me by choice. That's all I want. That's all I've ever really wanted. Even when I didn't know it. He took the document back, walked to the fireplace in the corner of our room. Watch. He lit a match, held it to the corner of the contract. The paper caught, curled, turned to ash. We watched it burn together. The last physical evidence of how we'd started disappearing into smoke. There, he said, turning back to me. Now we're really married. No contracts, no obligations. Just two people who chose each other. I crossed to him, wrapped my arms around his waist. I would have stayed anyway, even with the contract. I know, but I needed you to know you could leave. That you're here because you want to be, not because you have to be. He held me tight. That makes all the difference. We made love that night with tenderness that felt new, even after a year of learning each other's bodies. Afterward, we lay tangled together in the dark, and I thought about the question Victoria had asked a year ago. Are you a victim? No, I'd never been a victim. I'd been a woman making impossible choices, fighting for what mattered, building something real from the wreckage of inherited wounds. And Damien, he'd never been a monster, just a man who'd forgotten how to be human, who'd spent 20 years building walls so high he'd trapped himself inside them. Together, we'd torn those walls down, built something better in their place. Elena, Damien's voice in the dark. Yes. Thank you for teaching me that love isn't about control, that it's about showing up even when it's terrifying, that it's about choosing someone every single day, even when, especially when, it would be easier to walk away. You taught me that too. Then we're even. I smiled against his chest. We're partners. That's better than even. Much better. We fell asleep like that. Two people who'd been brought together by a contract but stayed together by choice. And in the morning, we'd wake up and choose each other again. And the morning after that. And the one after that. Because that's what love was, we'd learned. Not grand gestures or dramatic moments. Just a daily decision to show up, to be present, to be human together. Some contracts were meant to be broken. Ours was meant to be rewritten. Damien, 6 months later. I stood in the Morgan Tech offices, no longer cramped, thanks to Cross Ventures investment, and watched Elena present the new encryption algorithm to a room full of potential clients. She was brilliant, confident, completely in her element. This was what I'd almost destroyed. Her father's legacy, her passion, the things she'd sacrificed so much to protect. After the presentation, she found me in the hallway. What did you think? I think you're going to change the industry. Your father will be proud. Our father, she corrected. You funded this. You made it possible. You made it worth funding. I pulled her close. I'm proud of you. That means everything. She kissed me, quick and sweet. Dinner tonight? I'm thinking that Thai place in Park Slope. Can't. Board meeting until 8. I saw her face fall slightly. But I'll be home by 9. We can order in, watch that documentary you wanted to see. You hate documentaries. I love you more than I hate documentaries. I kissed her forehead. 9 o'clock. I promise. I made it home at 8:47, early, because I'd learned that promises to Elena mattered more than board meetings. She was in the kitchen when I arrived, attempting to cook something that smelled vaguely like burning. You're early, she said, looking guilty. I was trying to surprise you with dinner. It's not going well. I looked at the smoke rising from the pan. I can see that. In my defense, your fancy stove has too many buttons. It has 4 burners and an oven. That's standard. I move her aside gently, assess the damage. What were you making? Pasta primavera. Or it was supposed to be. Now it's more like pasta disaster. I couldn't help it. I laughed, really laughed, the kind that came from deep in my chest and felt like joy. Order Thai. I'll clean this up. You're not mad. Why would I be mad? You try to do something nice. The execution needs work, but the intention was perfect. I pulled her close, kissed her properly. I love you, even your terrible cooking. I love you too, even your ridiculous stove. We ordered Thai, ate it on the couch while watching her documentary about climate change. I fell asleep halfway through, my head in her lap, her fingers running through my hair. And when I woke up at 2 a.m, old habits, she was still there, still touching me. Like she was afraid I'd disappear if she stopped. Can't sleep? I asked. Didn't want to wake you. You look peaceful. She smiled down at me. You don't get peaceful often. I do with you. I sat up, pulled her into my lap. Elena, I need to tell you something. That sounds ominous. It's not. It's good. I think. I took a breath. I've been talking with Melissa about succession planning. Real succession planning, not just delegation. Okay. I want to step back from Cross Ventures. Not completely. I'd stay on the board, handle major deals. But day-to-day operations, the constant travel, the 18-hour days, I want to give that to Melissa. Let her run the company. Elena pulled back to look at me. Why? Because I don't want to be 40 and realize I missed my life because I was too busy building an empire. Because I want time with you, real time, not just stolen moments between meetings. Because you were right a year ago when you said I was building a monument to my control issues instead of something sustainable. What would you do instead? I don't know yet. Maybe invest in startups, mentor young entrepreneurs. Maybe travel with you, see the world outside boardrooms and penthouses. Maybe just exist, be human. Figure out who Damien Cross is when he's not Cross Ventures. She was quiet for a long moment. Then that terrifies you. It does. But staying the same terrifies me more. I touched her face. I spent 20 years proving I was worthy by building something massive. But the only time I've ever felt truly worthy is when I'm with you. When I'm not performing or controlling or maintaining walls. When I'm just me. I love just you. I know. That's why I'm doing this. I pulled out my phone, showed her an email I drafted to the board. I'm proposing the transition happen over the next year. Gradual, so the company stays stable. But by this time next year, Melissa will be CEO, and I'll be whatever I'm supposed to be next. You're sure? I'm terrified, but yes, I'm sure. I set down the phone. Will you help me figure out who I am without the company? Of course. That's what partners do. I sent the email. Watched it disappear into the digital void, carrying with it the identity I'd built for 20 years. And instead of panic, I felt relief. Because Elena was right. I was more than Cross Ventures. I just had to remember how to be that person. Elena, present day. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in a meeting at Morgan Tech, unknown number, which I usually ignored. But something made me answer. Is this Elena Cross? A woman's voice, professional but warm. Yes. Who's calling? My name is Dr. Sarachun. I'm a grief counselor at Mount Sinai. I'm calling about Thomas Morgan. My heart stopped. My father? He died over a year ago. I know. I'm sorry for your loss. I was his therapist for the last 6 months of his life. He left something for you in my care, with instructions to deliver it on the anniversary of his death. A pause. Would you be available to come to my office this week? I met with Dr. Chun on Thursday. Her office was in Midtown, warm and cluttered with books, the kind of space that felt safe. She handed me an envelope, thick, sealed with the same red wax as the contract had been. He was very specific about the timing. Dr. Chin said, he wanted you to have this after you'd had time to process his death, to build your own life. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside, a letter, handwritten on my father's letterhead. My dearest Elena, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if Dr. Chin followed my instructions, you've had a year to build a life without me. I hope it's a good life. I hope you're happy. I need to tell you something I never had the courage to say while I was alive. I'm sorry for the debt, for the contract, for putting you in an impossible position. I thought I could fix it before I died. Thought I had more time. But time is the one thing we can never negotiate for. By now, you probably married Damien Cross. I know what you're thinking, that I trapped you, that I forced you into a life you didn't choose. But here's what I need you to understand. I knew Damien. Not well, but enough. I knew that beneath the armor and the control, he was a good man. A broken man like I was broken. A man shaped by his father's mistakes, like you were shaped by mine. I didn't leave you the contract to punish you. I left because I believed, hoped, that you and Damien might save each other. That two people carrying the weight of their fathers might find a way to build peace. Was I wrong? Maybe. Maybe I was a coward who couldn't face his own mistakes, who put the burden of redemption on his daughter's shoulders. If that's true, I'm sorry. More sorry than words can convey. But if I was right, if you and Damien found something real in that impossible situation, then maybe my mistakes weren't entirely wasted. Maybe some good came from the wreckage. I love you, Elena. I loved you from the moment you were born until the moment I died. You were always the best thing I ever created. Not Morgan Tech, not the patents or the algorithms. You, my brilliant, stubborn, compassionate daughter, who deserves so much better than the life I gave her. Be happy. That's all I ever wanted for you. Be happy and forgive me if you can. Love, always, Dad. I sat in Dr. Chen's office and cried. Ugly, wrenching sobs that I'd been holding back for over a year. Cried for my father, for the burden he'd carried, for the impossible choice he'd made. Cried for the girl I'd been before the contract, and the woman I'd become because of it. When I finally stopped, Dr. Chen handed me tissues. He talked about you often. How proud he was. How guilty he felt. Did he know? About Damien and me? He hoped. That's all he could do. Hope that his mistake might lead to something good. She paused. Did it? I looked at the black sapphire ring on my left hand, at the platinum band beside it, thought about Damien playing Chopin at 3 a.m, about the brownstone we'd built into a home, about the life we were creating together. Yes, I said quietly. It did. I showed Damien the letter that night. We sat in our library, the one we built together, lined with both our books, and he read it twice, his expression unreadable. He knew, Damien said finally. Your father knew what he was doing, knew I'd enforced the contract. He hoped we'd find each other. That's a hell of a gamble. What if we hadn't? What if I'd been the monster everyone thought I was? But you weren't. You aren't. I took his hand. He saw something in you. The same thing I saw. Someone capable of change. Someone worth the risk. Damien was quiet for a long time. Then, I spent a year hating your father, blaming him for everything. My father's death, the bankruptcy, the years of struggling. And now what? Now I think maybe he gave me the greatest gift anyone ever has. He gave me you. He looked at me, and his eyes were wet. I don't know if I can forgive him for what he did to my father, but I can thank him for what he gave me, for the impossible situation that led to us. I kissed him, tasting salt and gratitude and the complicated mess of inherited wounds finally healing. My father would have liked you. The real you, not the armor. I would have liked him too. Eventually, we sat in the library until late, talking about our fathers, about the weight of their mistakes, about the choice to build something different. And I realized something. We've been so focused on surviving their war that we've forgotten to honor what they'd given us. My father had given me resilience, intelligence, the belief that I could build something meaningful. Damien's father had given him drive, determination, the refusal to accept defeat. Those gifts had shaped us, made us who we were, and while the pain was real, so was the strength that came from surviving it. I want to do something, I said, for them, both of them. Like what? A scholarship fund for kids who've lost parents, who are trying to build something from nothing. We could fund it through Morgan Tech and Cross Ventures, called the Morgan Cross Foundation. Damien considered it, then nodded. I like that. Turning their war into something that helps people. Turning their mistakes into redemption. Our redemption, too. We launched the foundation 3 months later. The first scholarship went to a girl from Brooklyn whose father had died of cancer, leaving her with debt and dreams of studying engineering. She reminded me of myself, scared but determined, carrying weight that wasn't hers but refusing to let it crush her. At the ceremony, I looked at Damien and saw tears in his eyes again. He'd gotten better at crying over the past year, better at feeling, at being present, at letting himself be moved by things that mattered. You okay? I whispered. I'm thinking about my father, about how he'd feel knowing something good came from his pain. He squeezed my hand. I think he'd be proud of this, of us. Mine, too. That night, we stood in our garden, the same place we'd renewed our vows, and looked up at the stars barely visible through Manhattan's light pollution. Do you ever regret it? Damien asked. Staying with me? Building this life? Never. Do you regret enforcing the contract? I regret the pain it caused you, but I don't regret where we ended up. He pulled me close. We took something broken and built it into something whole. That's worth all the pain that came before. Some contracts are meant to be broken, I said, and some are meant to be rewritten into something better. He kissed the top of my head. We rewrote ours into a love story. A complicated love story. The best ones always are. We went inside, to the home we'd built, the life we'd chosen, and as I fell asleep in Damien's arms, I thought about my father's letter, about his hope that two broken people might save each other. He'd been right. We had saved each other, not through grand gestures or dramatic moments, but through the daily choice to show up, to be present, to be human together. That was love. That was partnership. That was everything we'd built from the ashes of our father's war. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The beginning of forever. 2 years after the vow renewal, Damien stepped down as CEO of Cross Ventures. Melissa took over seamlessly, and the company thrived under her leadership. Damien stayed on the board but spent most of his time mentoring young entrepreneurs and investing in startups that reminded him of his father's original vision. Morgan Tech went public, making me independently wealthy. Not Damien's wife who'd married into money, but a successful businesswoman in my own right. We celebrated by taking a month off, traveling through Europe, seeing the world outside boardrooms and penthouses. In Paris, standing on a bridge over the Seine at sunset, Damien turned to me and said, "I want a family." I looked at him, surprised. We'd never discussed children. "You do? I want to build something with you that isn't about our fathers or their mistakes. Something that's just ours." He took my hands. "I want to be a father. A better one than mine was. And I want to do it with you. I want that too." 9 months later, we welcomed a daughter. We named her Hope. Not after anyone, not carrying the weight of inherited names. Just hope, a promise that the future could be different than the past. Damien cried when he held her for the first time. Cried and whispered promises about the life he'd give her, the father he'd be, the love she'd never have to question. And watching him with our daughter, I knew we'd done it. We'd taken the broken pieces of our father's war and built something whole, something beautiful, something worth all the pain that came before. Elena, 5 years after contract, I found Damien in Hope's room, watching our 3-year-old daughter sleep. She had his dark hair, my eyes, and a stubborn streak that came from both of us. "Can't sleep?" I asked, wrapping my arms around him from behind, just thinking about how different things could have been. He turned in my arms. "If you'd run, if I'd let you go, if we both chose an easy path instead of fighting for this." But we didn't. No, we didn't. He kissed me softly. "Thank you for that, for staying, for teaching me that love isn't about control or contracts, for giving me this life." We gave each other this life. We stood in our daughter's doorway, watching her sleep, and I thought about the contract that had brought us together, about the impossible choice I'd made in Damien's office 5 years ago, about every moment since then, the fights and the reconciliations, the fear and the hope, the daily decision to choose each other. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it, every single moment. "I love you," I whispered. "I love you too." Damien pulled me closer. Always. Together. Always together. We went to bed in the home we'd built, in the life we'd chosen, surrounded by the family we'd created. And as I drifted off to sleep in Damien's arms, I thought about my father's letter one last time. "Be happy. That's all I ever wanted for you." I was happy. We were happy. And that was everything. The end.